1997 yılı Türkiye Masonları açısından çok önemli bir yıl olmuştu. İlk defa Mason mabetlerinde gizli çekimler gerçekleştirilmiş ve bu görüntüler Kanal 7 televizyonunda günlerce yayınlanmıştı. İki ayrı locada çekilmiş olan gizli kamera görüntüleri hem Türk halkını hem de yüksek derecelere ulaşmamış Masonları şoke etti. 1738 yılında İstanbul'da kurulan ilk locadan bu yana gizliliğini koruyarak gelen Masonların görüntülerinin deşifre edilmesi ve Masonluğun gerçek yüzünün gözler önüne serilmesi günlerce konuşuldu. Adayları tanıdınız.
Serdar Büyüküstün, mesleği elektrik mühendisi. Aykut Erensoy, mesleği elektrik mühendisi. Kenan Ali Akman, mesleği serbest ticaret.
Adayların kimlikleri anlaşıldı. Onları içeri alınız. Sayın baylar, her şeyden önce bize söz vermenizi istiyoruz. Aramıza alınmanız kabul edilse de edilmese de bizim düşünce odası dediğimiz o karanlık bölgeye girdiğiniz andan başlayarak şu ana kadar görüp işittiklerinizi ve bundan böyle burada işiteceklerinizi, gözleriniz açıldıktan sonra da göreceklerinizi hiç kimseye söylemeyeceğinize namusunuz ve onurunuz üzerine söz verir misiniz? Sayın Aykut Erensoy,
Evet, söz veririm.
Sayın Serdar Büyüküstün,
Söz veririm.
Sayın Kenan Ali Akman,
Evet, söz veririm.
soruşturucu kardeşim adayları oturtunuz. Sayın Serdar Büyüküstün, göğsünüze dayanan ve bir elinizle size yoklatılan şeyin ne olduğunu söyler misiniz?
Metal bir parça. Kılıç.
Sayın Aykut Erensoy, göğsünüze dayanan ve bir elinizle size yoklatılan şeyin ne olduğunu söyler misiniz?
Kılıca benziyor.
Kılıcın göğüslerinize dayandırılması, verdiğiniz sözleri duymazsanız yaşamınız boyunca pişmanlık duyacağınızı ve acı çekeceğinizi bildirir. Herhangi bir yanlış anlamaya yer kalmaması için şunu da öğrenmek isteriz. Aramıza girmek isteyen kişi gerçekten siz misiniz? Sayın Aykut Erensoy, Mason olabilmek için size verilen başvuru formunu hiçbir etki, baskı altında olmaksızın salt kendi istem ve buyurultunuzla siz mi doldurup imzaladınız?
Evet.
Adayların birinci yolculuğu yapmalarını sağlayınız. Gerçek ışığı arayan adam. Az önce okunan anda şimdi benimle birlikte tekrar ediniz. Evrenin ulu mimarı simgesiyle burada bulunan Mason topluluğu önünde kendi istek ve buyruğumla içtenlikle dolu olarak söz veriyorum.
Evrenin ulu mimarı simgesiyle burada bulunan Mason topluluğu önünde kendi istek ve buyruğumla içtenlikle dolu olarak söz veriyorum.
Bana söylenilecek ve gösterilecek Mason gizemlerini bir Mason'dan başkasına ve Mason lojasından başka bir yerde açıklamayacağım.
Bana söylenilecek ve gösterilecek Mason gizemlerini bir Mason'dan başkasına ve Mason lojasından başka bir yerde açıklamayacağım.
Masonların amaçları doğrultusunda çalışacağım.
Masonların amaçları doğrultusunda çalışacağım.
Özgür Masonlar Büyük Lojası'nın ilkelerine bağlı kalacağım.
Özgür Masonlar Büyük Lojası'nın ilkelerine bağlı kalacağım.
Üyesi olacağım locanın toplantılarına düzenli olarak katılacağım.
Üyesi olacağım locanın toplantılarına düzenli olarak katılacağım.
Birinci Nazır kardeşim, adaylar için ne istiyorsun?
Bilimsel gerçeğin ışığını saygıdeğer üstad.
Doğruyu ve bütün sütunları süsleyen kardeşlerim adaylar için ne istiyor?
Bilimsel gerçeğin ışığını saygıdeğer üstad.
Çekicin 3. vuruşunda bilimsel gerçeğin ışığı verirsin. Uçları size çevrilmiş bulunan kılıçlar bundan sonra yaşamınız saldırıya uğrarsa masonların sizi savunacaklarını simgelemektedir. Bu şok görüntülerin hemen ardından yayınlanan diğer çekimlerde ise Türkiye Masonluğu tamamen deşifre oldu. Bu görüntülerde yalnızca 33. dereceden masonların katılabildiği şeytana tapma ayini icra edilmekteydi. Ayini yöneten büyük üstad, locanın ortasında kesilen bir keçinin kanını içiyor ve İbranice bazı dualar okuyarak şeytana tapma ayinini sonuçlandırıyor. İstanbul'da bir mason locasında kaydedilmiş diğer bir görüntüde ise masonlar tarafından sürekli olarak inkar edilen masonik nikah töreni var.
Carolyn Hamlet is our guest on Extract Radio. Carolyn, are you there?
Yes, thank you so much, X.
Good evening, Carolyn. Thank you so much. There wouldn't be there wouldn't be a Carolyn tonight if you didn't decide to come on, and I really, really cannot thank you as far as your courage endorsing this. I really have no words other than that. Thank you for being here tonight with us, Carolyn.
Yeah, I appreciate your support in that and helping me feel comfortable with this, because none of this is easy to talk about, really.
I could imagine. I really could. I don't come from the life that you had, so I don't have any words about that. So I don't want to be mundane, nor do I want to be boring for yourself or the audience listening. Carolyn, you have a fantastic, uneasy life story. I know we can't do it in 57.5 minutes, but we're going to try to tackle the important pieces that you find, or relevant pieces, should I say, that you find in this story. Carolyn, how are you related, whether bloodline, initiation into this elite organization that is known throughout the world, the Illuminati?
Well, I'm not sure how far back it goes. My family came from Europe. I have my genealogy's been done by a couple of family members, and in that I have seen some interesting names, and I am aware of the fact that a lot of, well, not a lot, but a number of well-known people in the United States history are my ancestors. Some of the names that you might recognize are Andrew Jackson, Jefferson Davis. There's James Collinsworth, who is famous in the Texas history. The first Masonic funeral ever held in Texas was for James Collinsworth. A lot of my family line they were top Freemasons. Not all of them. I'm not sure if they were strictly, like the pure Illuminati bloodlines. They're like offshoots. If anybody wants to look at my genealogy, they're welcome to tell me what I am. I was told what I was. But they didn't use the term Illuminati. But
what did they use, Carol?
They used the term Illuminati. It was Illumined ones, which was, they looked at that as even above what people consider Illuminati. While I'm on the topic of some of the names, some people recognize names such as Brown or Ferguson, Dickinson. There's, of course, like Davis, Drake. There's Stanford. Robertson's another name. Some of my family members married into the Franklin family, the Bushes, the Windsors.
So the names you're giving us now, are they all names that you remember per se on a physical, visual basis, or are these just names that you know of?
Names that they're my ancestors. The closer ones would have married into Franklin's, Bushes, and Windsors, and Robertson. It's as the family line got closer to me, fewer people were working directly with the government. Although my uncle was asked to work with President Truman, to work directly with him. I don't know exactly what that was about. I was not told, and in my family, you don't ask questions. If you were told that, it was strange that I was even told that.
So tell me this, Carolyn, what I believe the Extract Radio audience would love to know, myself included. At what age did someone, whether it be your mother, who was heavily into this, if I'm mistaken, your father, your handlers, who were your handlers exactly? And at what age did they grab you and say, this is what you're going to do, and how exactly did they do it?
Well, when I was a couple of years old, well, first of all, at birth, I could see things in the physical realm that most people couldn't see. I could see into the spirit realm, and I also had like clairvoyant abilities. Maybe all babies do, I don't know, but I never lost mine. And I was able to see angelic beings. In fact, the very first time I ever prayed was because a real angel came and told me to pray. That happened very early on in my life, which was actually godsend, literally, because that kept my mind centered in on Him, a Heavenly Father, because that's how He was presented. He presented Himself to me as a Heavenly Father. Nobody told me that there was a Heavenly Father, but that is how I met. When I said my first prayer, that is the presence that came to me and revealed himself as a Heavenly Father and kept me through everything I've been through my life, led me through everything, through the organization and out of the organization. So now that I've got that out of the way, I'll say that when I was, since my mother was already working with some Ascended Masters since the time she was 16 years old, she had them giving her directions on how to raise me, just as they were giving me directions on how to raise my own sons. So I had my mentors that were in the body and out of the body. Now the mentors that wrote the children's books or the children's teaching material for Lucis Trust had me learning through their meditation techniques at probably around 4 years old, if not early. If not earlier than that. So
Wow.
my mother was training me. She knew my ability, so she also was taking instructions on how to help me progress in my clairvoyant abilities, because she knew that she needed to do that before the age of 7, because if you can train a child before the age of 7, then you pretty well have it done. You have it set for them.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Now, when you say train, Carolyn, I've written a blog on a TV show called The Event, and I remember specifically how they take little children, and they had them in this underground base. That's why I always say how the Illuminati tell us what they're going to do. What's frightening here is that what you're about to tell people is exactly what I saw on The Event 30-plus years later, which is now on NBC. Tell us how they came and took you. What did they do?
Okay.
Where did they take you?
That's funny because I just started watching the event, but I haven't gotten to that part, which is probably good. It might freak me out. Okay.
It probably will,
what
yeah.
I remember, oh man, thanks for the warning. I always remembered being taken as a very, very young child in the middle of the night by the very same two men.
What do they look like? What do they look like?
Well, it's funny. I think I knew who they were, at least one of them, and I'm not going to say who they are on the program.
Okay.
But one of them had a bodysuit on that was. I think this is the one that I would have recognized if he had not had a bodysuit on. I might have known who he was. I couldn't see his face, but I could see his build and kind of his features. I think I knew who that was. And the other one was just a regular, normal-looking person. Same two people. They would take me, first of all, when they would take me out of the house, they would drug me. And I can remember they would bring me back just before dawn. I would have nightmares as to what went on during that time, and the full memories began to resurface a couple years ago. But the flashbacks that I used to have, and then when the full memories came to me, it was an underground facility. That was one place. There were other places, but one was the underground facility, which I believe is MacDill Air Force Base. I live not that far from MacDill Air Force Base. They could have taken me by car, plane, or boat. I mean, we had an airport.
What was there, Carolyn? Were there other children?
What was there? They had cages. You know, like the old kind of zoo cages?
Yeah.
Like the thick, ugly-looking black bars. They were kids in cages.
What were they doing? What were they doing?
The kids were very, very afraid. They used the kids for experiments. There were sexual things going on there. The kids I knew they were taken from their homes. Some of them lived there. They never left. They were the same kids there every time I went. They had pleading eyes like, please, tell somebody I'm here. And I'd have nightmares that I should tell somebody about them, but when I'd wake up, the nightmare would fade. I was afraid to tell about them because I would be in trouble. And there were other children like me that would just be taken there for experiments or for mind control programming, and we would be taken home. And part of that programming also involved they'd have to take us to points of of death and bringing us back. But that's kind of another story.
I take that, Carolyn. What exactly did they program you children? Now you're 3, 4 years old, 2, 3, 4 years old here. What exactly did they program you to do?
Well, one memory I had is they were using other children to teach other children, showing that it's okay, making them think that it's normal to have like sexual relations with older men. That was one of the things, and had us playing with dolls to make us think that it was normal. Mm-hmm. And if we acted like it wasn't normal, then we would be punished for it. And that's one of the things. Other things, there was torturing of animals. There was skinning dogs alive. There was anything to threaten us and intimidate us, or to numb us, so that possibly we may want to do that to somebody else.
And your mother knew that this was ongoing with yourself? She did not?
No, she did not. And that's a whole other story that people can get into if they want to research other people's stories as to how that can happen.
Okay, fair enough. Then let's continue with your story. Let's progress. Let's fast forward a little bit here in the teenagehood and your 20s and whatnot. And as you got older from this, your first memories as a child, what exactly did they tell you about this group and who the leader was? Your ascended masters, that is. What exactly did they have you do and program you to believe?
I always believed. Okay, it was not until the very end that I always believed they were of God, that we were highly evolved spiritual beings that were on earth to help humanity progress spiritually, and that we were of a special bloodline physically, and that originally we didn't even come from earth, that we weren't even human. So I had that totally ingrained in me, and I had no reason not to believe that, but with the heart that I had, which was one that I loved God, I wanted to help mankind. So they used that to get me to work for them. As long as I thought I was doing good, I was a good worker. Now, if I had a devious heart, maybe I would have been on the other side of the organization, which is more satanic. I mean, outright the dark arts. I didn't fit into that group. So it was up until the time when I was getting ready to leave. The time I left the organization was probably 1985. I was involved in what they were doing for the last section of this plan of bringing in, they called the Christ, which is actually the Antichrist. I didn't know that until they showed me.
What do you mean until they? What do you mean until they showed you? How exactly did they show you this, Carolyn?
Well, first of all, they told me I was going to be a Judas to the group. That's what they said. I was going to speak out against them before millions of people and tell about the plan. I could not understand how in the world I'd ever do such a thing like that. So as a little bit of time went on, I realized what they meant by that, because they didn't want me to leave the plan. They tried very hard to, very careful with their teaching with me, because they said they knew that they would lose me if they took me too fast. But it got into the higher Luciferic teachings. There's all different types of Luciferic teachings, different levels. And on one level, they make Lucifer the hero, the savior. A lot of people are stuck on that level. And another level, you get to the point where they want you to know who Lucifer is, and they want you to worship him and love him. And when I got to the position where they needed me to know what I was dealing with, I was involved in bringing beings from another realm here that were of Lucifer's hierarchy. I didn't know him as Lucifer at that time, but the top ascended masters.
Well, you actually met this entity as Lucifer in a physical format?
Well, I saw two. I've seen three entities. One that they brought in that they said was going to be, well, that I helped bring in. But they said he was to be the one to be Christ, which is actually, it's kind of hard to explain. Some people probably understand what I'm talking about. When I mention avatar, it's actually a possession that takes place of a human being.
So they brought in the being who was not with this avatar as of yet.
Yeah, but had been chosen for that. He was not the highest ranking one in Lucifer's hierarchy.
What did he look like?
He was very handsome. They're all very handsome. He looked like kind of Mediterranean looking. He had kind of grayish, bluish eyes. He would appear to be, at that time, it would have been, probably looks around in his early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And he likes to look like that. He chose the way he would look. And his birth date, interesting enough, I looked at it is like an occult date. It was October 11th, and I think it was in '84. So those were kind of occult dates too. I didn't recognize it at the time, but I looked back later, and that's an interesting date. But that's one being.
Okay, and these beings, what happened to them? How come they're not on the world stage as of now to take over for this Christ Antichrist scenario?
That's a good question. I don't know. Some of them may be just influencing others. Some of them, the plan was that they originally were going to be walk-ins, that they were going to, okay, I'm telling a story as they told me. It could be, this part could be a lie. What I was told was that they were going to work through human beings, be walk-ins, like possessing them. And then they changed their mind. They wanted to possess their own bodies. So when I left the organization, we were actually creating physical bodies for these beings to walk around in so that they could manifest themselves on this physical plane for longer periods of time, and that they could transport themselves without without jets. I can't even remember the term for that, but so I don't know if this person is going to show up. And I don't know how that's going to work, but I think the important point is, what's the most real thing that ever happened to me in all this, that is the turning point for me, is I had to stand face to face with a being that they called the most illumined of all. If anybody on the face of this earth experienced what I did, they would have no doubt whatsoever that there is an Antichrist.
Well, tell me about that. Tell me a story. Your face-to-face encounter with this Antichrist.
Okay, this was a light. This was a being that was stories and stories tall. He was just brilliantly white light. He was just, the presence of him was of complete love and beauty and just everything wonderful. I felt like it was Jesus Christ. I didn't know that I knew who Jesus Christ was. It's like it was in my heart that I recognized, and this being was even more of what a human being could imagine in their mind what Jesus Christ would be. If you're familiar with Jesus Christ in the Bible, if you really center on his words and listen to them and they become a part of you, this being actually emanates all that equally. But if you don't know, I had to show me Jesus was real so that I would see that they have an Antichrist, that's their Christ, the one the United Nations is trying to set up as the global rule.
Wow.
Am I still on air?
Yeah, I'm trying to take all this in here. The United Nations is trying to set up this Antichrist. That is correct. That has been very, very well researched. I'm curious. I got to know, Carolyn, what did the organization teach you of Jesus Christ in comparison to Lucifer? How are you illuminated ones? What are you illuminated ones taught of Jesus Christ? What do they say about him?
It depends on, there's so many different teachings on the different levels. One of the main teachings is that Jesus and the Christ are two separate things. That Jesus was a man, and that he gave up, he became like a walk-in, got possessed, so to speak, by a higher evolved being called, well, they call him an avatar. That avatar took control of Jesus, the man's body, for the 3-year ministry. And Jesus died on the cross, they say, and the avatar left before that time. So they say Jesus earned his mastership for the ascended masters to allow that Christ for that age to use the body of Jesus. Now, interesting enough, people don't pay attention to Jesus Christ. You would think that if he's an ascended master, oh yeah, you should read the words of Jesus in the Bible. Do they teach that? No, they try to get you away from who he is.
Yeah.
So then they don't teach you about Jesus. They want you to ignore Jesus. But when you get to the top levels, in order for you to know who Lucifer is, you have to know who Jesus is. They want you to know so that you can bow to Lucifer.
Yeah.
Because Lucifer is against God.
Of course.
He's the created.
Let's put that aside for now, Carolyn. What would it's been very well researched and documented, as people who listen to the show know that I am huge. I've been researching the Illuminati for many years. It's what started me to do this program, and the Freemasons as well. Excuse me. Illuminati people, members of the established order, have infiltrated levels of government, finance, politics, schools. How do these members infiltrate all these organizations?
It's been going on for a lot of years. Well, I can give you one instance. My mother she worked, gosh, it's like an everyday living. Let's put it in the way of like a Christian. They're evangelizing. They evangelize when they go to the grocery store. They evangelize when they go to the doctor. They evangelize when they go vote. It's whatever they do. If that's what they have their allegiance to, that's what they do. That's on their mind, and they'll put a plug or a seed here and there, and that's what people in the organization do. They may be on a lower level. They may think they're on like the highest level of understanding, but in that level of understanding, they will try to plug what they know as being the truth. So my mom was involved in education. She was a teacher for about a year. She plugged some of that information into her 6th grade classroom. I did with all of my friends. We infiltrated churches. We were sent to various churches to do just that, infiltrate, and sometimes
Carolyn? No, I was going to say, when you say infiltrate, how exactly did you infiltrate churches? What was your role? What did you do exactly?
Well, it depended on the church, and it depended on if we were sent to after a specific person. My mother was sent after a pastor, and she actually telepathically dictated a sermon to this pastor. But that was after she and some of her group physical members had been working on this pastor, putting little seeds here and there in his mind, and making suggestive statements, not in sexually, but in scriptural suggestive statements, till finally he was open to the idea that maybe he could telepathically receive a sermon. That's a story I won't go into now, but I've written it, and it's on my blog. Something I'll be updating later is my blog. I was sent in to after some priests in a Catholic church, and I was sent in with several other people into a charismatic church before. And what we would do is we would pick out people who were sensitive to some of our teachings and just lead them astray. We didn't consider them leading them astray. We were considering giving them an opportunity to progress spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my mentor knew what we were doing. That we weren't trying to. Okay, the mentors know that that you're not offering the opportunity. They're actually collecting servants to do their bidding. But we
Okay.
we would be presenting it as hey, you're gifted, come join us. And if you want to stay in the church, God wants you in the church. Why don't you affect other people with this doctrine? You know, you're too good for this lower class doctrine that sticks straight to what Jesus teaches. Let's show you the higher levels.
Okay. Let's get into exactly the Illuminati, the illuminated ones. How exactly? What is their end game, Carolyn? What is their goal with humanity? What are they trying to do here on Earth?
Well, the physical members, I think it probably varies according to the members. I don't know personally. I don't think I know personally any of the top members. Most of those people at the top levels do worship Lucifer. So I would assume that they're caught up in any of the evils that Lucifer is about, and they thrive on that, which is the power.
Mm-hmm.
They think they're better than everybody else. They're deceived by that. They totally believe that, and they totally believe everybody's scum under their feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why would they care? They want to see them crushed. Then there's the level up below that there's people that actually care for others.
Mm-hmm.
That they still think that they're helping others by leading them toward that new world order.
And speaking of New World Order, let's get into Bush Sr. and Jr. in the Bush family. Tell me what you know about them. I know that they are extensively, huge involvement in this organization. Tell me what you know about the Bush family.
I know that when I was 4 years old, I was told that there would be a man that the organization was going to choose that was going to give a speech and start introducing some of our esoteric words. They called it making it exoteric. And I don't have time to go into it right now what all that means about what this particular person, what was all involved in this particular speech. But I waited my entire life. Okay, first of all, I was told it was going to be toward the end of this century, and it was going to mark a launching into from the plan, what they call the plan for the New World Order, to the above ground, to start working more blatantly before people and using some more mind control techniques to the masses. Well, that speech was George W. Bush Sr. He gave the speech September 11th, 1990. The organization loves their numbers. They love 11s and they love 9s. And he introduced several of the words that were esoteric, and my ears perked up right away and knew exactly what that meant. Then on March 6, 1991, he gave another speech. It was a speech to Congress, and he mentioned the New World Order several times. And March is the third month, and then we have the sixth day. So we have another 9, 6 plus 3, 9. So we have another 9 plus 1991. They like those numbers.
Yeah, numerology is huge with these weirdos out there. Yeah, really huge.
So right off the top of my head, that's the main part that I know about them. I know that they were planning to use George Bush the Jr. on the Christian level, to say that he's Christian, to get the Christians to start following him.
Yeah.
That was some of the beginning of the manipulation of the Christian church.
Yeah, he's a real winner. What they picked in Bush Jr.
Yeah.
A real
I lost
winner.
some friends. I definitely lost some friends over that. Interesting thing is that I knew the signs. I knew when this was coming. I actually told people that George Jr. was going to win that election and actually selection, and I told them exactly what to expect during that administration. I lost friends over that, and then I lost Christian friends over me trying to remind them of his background.
Mm-hmm.
So they've played on that ever since, and I'm writing an article now to try to show those stages of how Christians have been manipulated.
Yeah, I can imagine so. How it's something that's going to continue to probably happen, Carolyn. I think you'll agree with me on that. Speaking of being manipulated, where are your masters, your handlers now? You've been out of the organization for X amount of years. Where are they now? Have they tried getting in contact with you again? How does that work?
Well, of course, my mother died when I was 17. The two physical mentors that worked with Lucius Trust Publishing Company are gone to their reward, whatever that is. And the other one, the other physical mentor I had in my adult life, I don't know. And I hope I never see that person ever again in my entire life. One person from that group has tried to contact me since then, says they're out. I don't want to talk to that person or see that person. So as for the physical, the other masters, occasionally somebody, they'll try to contact me telepathically. Or
what do they say to you telepathically? What do they say to you, Carolyn? We want you back. Come.
Well, they've tried like offers like, don't you miss us? You know, just funny stuff. You know, trying to show like their good side. Don't you miss us? Hey, we could sure use you. And then sometimes it's a threat. The last threat I got was actually from the Master Dua Kuel, Master DK, the one they call the Tibetan. None of these guys are benevolent as they claim.
Well,
Definitely isn't.
Well, that's what I've had a hard time understanding. Defectors, in the sense of they preach one thing, but let's talk about you walking. How do they just allow you to walk away from something like that? I would have in my research, it's been hard for me to understand the psyche and the psychology behind these so-called masters, that they would just repercussions of walking away. Well, what were your repercussions?
Okay, they don't have a choice, and they know it. And that's what made the Master DK so angry, is because I told him, I said, there's not a thing you can do about it if I'm ever going to talk out about you guys. And I mean, he's fuming. He was fuming. Why I try to stay as close as possible to God, because I know that if I don't, they can get me. If there's a weakness, they can get me. If I decide I want to drink alcohol, okay, if you've been in the occult, and weaknesses are intensified. So what they can do is they will use demonic type attachments or pressures to try to get you to weaken in your weak areas. If it's anger, it could be anger. They try to destroy one through that way. They try to create nightmares. So I'm constantly trying to put on the full armor of God. I'm constantly talking to my Heavenly Father. Were you going to say something?
No, I'm listening. No, please continue.
I've had physical demonic attacks where they've tried to beat me up. I used to have that all the time, but since I learned to use the name of Jesus, even sleep paralysis, or I have had paralysis where I'm wide awake, where I can't move, and in my mind I'll think, in the name of Jesus, and the thing will leave. It works for me. I don't know if it'll work for everybody. But
I understand. I respect that. Have you?
Yeah.
Have you been
physical? Go ahead.
No. Have you been followed? Have you been in any way physically threatened? Bombs? Anything? We've heard so many stories. Please tell us exactly how.
I've had my life threatened and my family's life threatened a number of times. I have had my car, which SUV, it didn't blow up right away. It caught on fire just moments after I got out of it. Fire department couldn't put the fire out, and they asked me if I knew of anybody who wanted to kill me because they found it was arson. What else? I can't think right now.
Well, tell me this, Carolyn. What made you come on Extract Radio tonight with me, X, and tell people who are listening right now, I've said it before the show, that I believe your story. And I'm going to get into, before the end of the show, the other defectors who are out there, some who are a crock of shit, in my opinion, some who are real. And I want to get your take on that. But how do you, if anyone from the Illuminati who knows, who just listening tonight, let's just say, what do you think they're saying about you?
Well, I think some of them may wonder how much I really do remember knowing, because in the mind control, a lot of people who have been controlled don't remember the details, and some of them never do, and they may wonder, what does she know? What does she remember? Not everybody in the organization's aware of what other people know. So I'm not afraid, at least at this point. I feel God's protection. I feel like he wants me to speak out, and that's the reason I'm on tonight. I've kept silent for a number of years. I haven't felt like it was right to say anything. I've been on a few radio programs before. I was on television many years ago. This is the right time to start telling some of my story, and one of the reasons I'm so concerned is that people are being so deceived right now by, well, I guess I'm the most concerned right now about a lot of the Christians.
The Christians. Why specifically the Christians?
Because a lot of them don't know. They call themselves Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And a Christian is somebody who puts to heart the teachings of Jesus Christ.
Okay.
And yet they're putting man's doctrine ahead of what Jesus teaches. And I'm trying to get people to see, look at what Jesus teaches first. Take him into your heart, or you'll never be able to tell what is not of Christ.
What about people who don't believe in Jesus Christ, religious groups, religious organizations, or not? What's going to happen to them when this figure shows his place on this world? What do you think is going to happen to them, Carolyn?
I'm not sure. I can tell you that I know that anyone who has a heart like Jesus Christ,
mm-hmm.
whether they know it's him or not, if they have that heart, that spiritual heart, they'll know the difference between what is of that true spiritual heart, that God, the Heavenly Father, the God of Abraham. They'll know him, and they'll know the difference. And I'm finding that there are a lot of people like that that are very aware of what's going on in the world.
Carolyn, where could people check out your blog? You have a blog site. Where could they go to? Is it www.crhamlet@gmail.com for your email?
Actually, that's the email.
Okay.
The blog is beyondthephysicalrealm.com. That's my blog spot. Mm-hmm. It's I haven't put much material there for a purpose, for a reason. I'll probably start adding some. I've written a lot, but I haven't felt right about putting it out yet.
Okay.
This is what you're hearing on this program tonight. Most of it I've never said before. Some humans have never heard it before.
Wow. Carolyn.
Give me the opportunity.
Absolutely. Carolyn, it's been my pleasure. John Todd, other Illuminati defectors, some of who have just plainly disappeared off this world. If you go on YouTube and type in Illuminati defectors, you'll get a guy named Leo in Italy. You'll get this, I think her name was Sylvie, going by the pseudonym name Sylvia. Henry Macco interviewed her. What do you take? What's your take, really quickly, on these people? Was John Todd the real deal?
I don't know. I've heard more what other people have said. I haven't spent a whole lot of time looking into other people because it kind of gives me the creeps. But from what I did hear about John Todd, the little bit I heard, I believe he's the real deal. And as for, I think I heard somebody pronounce it Savali, but everybody, either way.
Salvi. Yeah, Salvi.
The little
Salvi.
bit that I've heard, I don't think I've heard any programs with her. I've read some of her stuff, and I'd say that I line more up with agreeing or believing in her that she's correct. Kathy O'Brien's another one. I wonder, she mentions MacDill Air Force Base. I haven't read much of her stuff. Now, somebody I've had more contact with is Lauren Stratford, and that was through Johanna Michelson. Johanna Michelson was very instrumental in helping me get out of what I was involved in with her book, The Beautiful Side of Evil, and me speaking with her on the telephone a number of times with Johanna and her husband, Randolph.
Yeah.
But it was through Johanna who helped Lauren Stratford get out of what she was in and helped heal Lauren Stratford. That was through Johanna. Lauren was also able to help me.
Yeah.
I absolutely believe Lauren's the real deal. And
Okay.
It's a shame that people really will condemn her over that. And Lauren, I understand, passed away. I think it was in 2002.
Yes, she did, and I agree with you 100% on it. It is a shame that, unfortunately, some people have to go in vain like that. Their work is not believed. You are not going to be one of them, Carolyn. I really thank you very much for coming on the show. I admire your courage to do this. I have no other words but saying that I do believe you, and I think this hour has been very, very educational for myself and the people listening to Extract Radio on how certain these operations work within the organization. I thank you for coming on here, Carolyn.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Carolyn Hamlin was our guest here on Extract Radio. Remarkable, courageous woman fighting the good fight, telling her side of the story. I believe to be true. I hope everyone enjoyed the program and her story. It makes you think, people. These people do really exist, and they're doing it right in plain sight, and they're doing it very, very, very scary, very trickery per se, and they're deceiving mankind, and it does happen, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm glad we had a very good guest tonight to explain that to everybody.
Before I start today, I'd like to leave a text with everybody. I try to leave it across the country. When I was saved, I knew absolutely nothing about the Bible except some basic teaching that I had picked up by accident when I was about 10 years old in a Nazarene church. When the people that I was being raised by that were in witchcraft found out that I had went to this church, they, as they say, blew their stack. And that was that for going and hearing anything about the Word of God. So everything I know about the Bible I've learned in the last 5 years. I had some very, very good teachers in San Antonio, a man named Jack Taylor, a Southern Baptist pastor. And when I told him, it was like 2 days after I was saved, the things that I had come out of and was afraid of and so on, he gave me this scripture as kind of my battle cry text, whatever, throughout the walk in the ministry that I would have later. And I've left it with Christians because in a day and age when we see so much happening around us, we lose sight of who's behind what is happening around us. We lose sight that if it is good and positive, it's the Lord, and if it's evil and rebellious, it's the devil. A lot of times we look at our teenage children and we think that they're the devil, and the teenage children look at the parents and think they're the devil. And we lose sight of really who our enemy is in this warfare that we're in. So I'd like to leave this with you. I'm sure many of you know it, and if you don't, I recommend that you mark it in your Bible and learn it by heart. Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. I didn't bring my Amplified with me today. I was a little rushed as I was late. But the Amplified gives a much clearer description of it. So many times we see political corruption and things going on, and these are a few things that I'm going to discuss today. But we lose sight of who's behind that political corruption. We looked at Nixon's era, we look at some of the things that Jimmy Carter's doing today, and we know they're not Christian deeds. We know that they have nothing to do with the Lord. but we kind of scratch them off to the man. We should scratch them off to the enemy, and then man is not the enemy. I came out of a family that was, many of you, how many of you were raised Baptist? We'll start that way. All your life, that's what you were raised from the time you were a little child, a Baptist. How many of you were raised in a Christian home? Okay. Now, so in the Pentecostal churches, which I try to avoid as much as possible, they have a term called homegrown Pentecostal. I guess homegrown Baptist would be just as fashionable. Well, I was a homegrown witch. From the time that I was 5 years old, I knew nothing but witchcraft. I would have known it sooner, but they didn't discuss it with me. They take you very, very young. And even before they start talking about the so-called positive aspects of witchcraft, they talk about the negative aspects of Christianity. So that being a Christian is a miracle, not because I wanted out of witchcraft, but that I would consider Christianity the only way out. Because they brainwash you from very early childhood that the Christian is the most evil being or creature in the universe. That he wants nothing more than to take the everyday witch out and shoot them, burn them, hang them, whatever he can do, and that they are the most hateful beings that ever existed, on the same level as maybe Adolf Hitler. So this is what I was raised up to believe. And my last name was Todd, but that was just changed about 60 years ago. Until then, our name was Collins. And the Collins family, my direct tree, was responsible, according to witchcraft history and a few history books that I can find also, was bringing witchcraft to the United States. So when I was 14, and some of you might consider that a very early age, but it wasn't. It was kind of a late age for this. I was initiated into organized witchcraft. In other words, I was made what Brother Rasmussen is. I was made a pastor, a minister. I was ordained. In fact, a few years later, when I went to enlist in the service, I didn't have to go because I was draft exempt, because I was the ordained minister of a legal recognized church. So, 4D status for a few people who know what that is. I'm sure Brother Rasmussen does. Ordained ministers are exempt. And I enlisted and went through the service until I got into a little shooting incident in Germany. After I'd come back from Vietnam, I'd re-enlisted and went to Germany. And I was getting ready to be court-martialed. In fact, I had everything down pat. I was as good as gone. We had entered a plea of guilty for a deal of 35 years and then parole, and they wouldn't even consider it. An officer had been killed in the situation, and I was more or less just waiting to be transferred to Leavenworth to serve the time when Witchcraft Church, which I thought was just a little group of people that I belonged to, sent a political member of that church, a state senator, two of them, state senator, a U.S. senator, and a representative over to Germany, and they took hold of the situation, and 24 hours later I was a civilian in the United States with all my time, rank, and an honorable discharge, and my court-martial records didn't exist anymore. And all of a sudden I realized I wasn't in something that just lit candles and incense and said magic words once in a while and stuck pins and dolls. There was a little more to it than just a religion. And I left New Jersey and went home to Columbus, and I asked my real mother, I have two mothers, I have a foster mother and a real mother, I asked my real mother what I was to do, and she said, here's an envelope with $2,000 and a one-way ticket to New York City. You get there on the next plane and I'll tell them you're coming. She didn't tell me who she was going to tell was coming or anything. But I flew to New York City and I spent 6 months learning all new witchcraft. Till then I had been taught what most of the teenagers learn. And I want to tell the teenagers something here real quick. I'm sure most of you probably go to the school here. But if you were in a regular school, you would meet witches running all over the place. We hear this across the country. Almost every high school has it, especially in California. And they tell the young people lies. They tell them it's ESP. They tell them it's psychic power. They tell them it's spirits of the dead. They tell them everything but what it is. And I was supposed to be a high priest leading a church that had 13 ministers to it, plus a couple hundred people in this congregation. And I believed this. And then all of a sudden, for 6 months, this man, Dr. Buckland, unraveled everything and told me there was a one God, where before we believed there was four. There was one, and his name was Lucifer. And it was very quickly to tell me that wasn't Satan. He didn't want me to get any ideas that Christians could be telling me the truth. I should have thought then that if they had lied to me for almost 18 years, they were probably lying to me now. But I went ahead and believed it. For 6 months, I took lessons in witchcraft that I didn't even know that things could happen that had happened. And then I was transferred to Los Angeles, good old L.A. Can't seem to get away from it. And for 6 months, my foster mother taught me something that your pastor is very familiar with, the political situation of the occult. And all of a sudden, I realized that witchcraft wasn't just spell casting, it had a purpose in mind. And that's when I started getting a little afraid, because when I was 10, as I said, I learned a little about the Bible. It just happened to be all revelations that I learned. And all of a sudden, we were discussing a world ruler that would be personally guided by Lucifer, that could gain control of the world supernaturally and take control of people's minds. Of course, they didn't say there was a defense against this. The way they spoke, everybody was affected. They didn't say anything about the blood of Jesus. But we sat there, and for 6 months I learned the political structure and the history of witchcraft. And then I was taken to Colorado, and I was placed through an initiation into the sixth realm. And this initiation consisted of a blood sacrifice. And from then on, I was given a territory of 13 states. This didn't happen to be one of them. This belonged to my foster mother. But I was in charge of all the occult, political, and drug activity in 13 states. And this is where I was in 1972 when I met the Lord. Well, I, at first, for many years, said by accident, but I've come to realize there's no such thing as an accident when it comes to Jesus. He had everything perfectly planned out. But it was a combination of a personal witness through a coffee house, a Jack Chick Publications tract, and the movie The Cross and the Switchblade. And a lot of things that, for instance, one Baptist church praying and fasting that I would get saved. I figured if I got saved, maybe the rest of the witches would follow in suit. It didn't exactly happen that way, but it did put a dent in the situation. So that's quickly, and very quickly, my testimony. What I want to do today is, for the young people and the adults here, I'd like to throw this thing open to question and answer. Because some of you may have run across situations, some of you may have questions on how to deal with people that are in this. I want to leave one word with you. The only answer to witchcraft, the only way that anybody's ever succeeded in getting out has been through the blood of Christ. Everybody else who's ever tried to get out of witchcraft, and I want to leave this with you, witchcraft is real and supernatural. I remember the minister who witnessed to me said that until he found his daughter in it, he was always, and he was a Baptist pastor, was always raised to believe that witches were fables that flew around on broomsticks on Halloween night. And all of a sudden he woke up and found it was very real. And if you want to find out the power behind it and how it can be defeated, I suggest the 16th chapter of Acts. Paul handles it very nicely. And it's one thing that I can testify to all the teenagers considering the lie that you're born with witchcraft, which is the lie that they give you. When I was saved, and the pastors there at the Baptist church called the demons that were inside me out, I lost all that power of witchcraft. I've never regretted it. If the power came from demons, I don't need the demons. So before you teenagers start fooling around with the astrology charts and the Ouija board, check out the 18th chapter of Deuteronomy and find out you'll pick up a demon from doing it. And you pick up one, you keep on going. My foster mother wrote a book, and she said, doing one spell or practicing one seance in witchcraft is like jumping off of a tall mountain or a skyscraper. There's no turning back. It is the strongest addiction that I know. Dave Wilkerson said that he has seen people go through withdrawal from drugs many times, but seeing one witch go through withdrawal from the occult shattered his mind. And I've helped thousands of people through withdrawal from witchcraft and withdrawal from drugs. And once you've seen the withdrawal that a person goes through from being in witchcraft, you'll think that drugs is something you practice in kindergarten. It's that violent and that destructive, without Christ especially. And what I started to say was, nobody has ever succeeded in getting away because they simply will kill you with a spell. Now, Brother Rasmussen knows from testimony from other people who have been around, they haven't been able to do this to me or anybody else that has ever gotten out. A few people had been killed physically that have gotten out, that were Christians, that got out of witchcraft. And they've tried this with me and my wife and so on. But they've never succeeded, and we're still very, very much alive. But we have to depend wholly upon Jesus to stay in that situation. Now, before any of the young people decide that witchcraft's a groovy thing, they will tell you you can get out anytime you want. But once you're in, there's a bounty on your head should you ever leave. And I don't care if you're 13 or 14 years old, the bounty starts at $10,000, and they send a professional. They don't send an everyday person. If you're wondering why I'm still alive, it isn't easy. I've got the bullet holes in the buildings and the bombed-out buildings and everything else to the record, and I stand that Jesus kept us alive in every situation. You don't walk into a building as it blows up in your face and walk back out without a scratch on you unless the Lord is there to protect you. And this occult is very dangerous. Chick Publications did The Broken Cross, which will be on sale back here today. It's the only tract that I know of that has saved people out of witchcraft. And they did this book, and because of it, they moved to another building with bulletproof glass and bomb-proof walls. That's the situation. The artist draws his stories at home now in a dwelling that they don't know where he is, rather than try and drive to work and be in danger. And Jack, his staff is always on him to be more careful because they're trying to drive him off the road and stuff. We try to get him to drive a Cadillac that might stand up a little, but he says the Lord can protect him in his Toyota as well as a Cadillac, so he keeps on driving the Toyota. But that's the situation. It is no joke. It is a serious situation. The occult gives up less people to conversion than any other thing. And it's not because they don't want out. They desperately want out. We went to Minneapolis to where they had a convention. We took 10,000 of the Broken Cross there to distribute free, and they were so afraid of this book coming, they canceled the convention. Rather than let it fall in the hands of the people who would be coming from across Europe and across the United States to attend. But people came into our meetings there that came anyway, and they listened, and when they were done, they asked my wife and myself and other ministers, if you can put us in a safe place of protection, we'll come out. They want out. They know that Christianity is the only way, but they're physically afraid to come out. You think the mafia has fear, for those that have been watching The Godfather or something? There's no fear compared to the occult people coming after you. But we are believing that we will have this situation. Brother Rasmussen will be one of the few people in the United States who will know how to get converts to the refuge that we're preparing. So we're preparing a place not for them to go permanently and hide, but for them to grow in the Word and in physical strength so they can go out on their own and live. And Jack Chick will be putting in the back of all his publications on the occult the phone numbers of the different things, and you'll be one of the phone numbers that people can reach and say, we have a convert that's been won out of the occult. How do we get him to this refuge place? And he will be one of the few people in the United States that will know where this place is in the mountains. It'll be that well guarded. So we just ask your prayers and your questions now if you've got some. Yeah. Well, 12 years old girls are more or less. They've been known to get down to 10, but they usually start at 12 or 13 and go to 25. And for the people who like to hitchhike, this is how they pick them all up. And of course, the police will just tell the parents the kids run away from school. They use them for sexual and for sacrifice, human sacrifice purposes. For those that are wondering if that is an accident, you're in LA County here, right? The LA County Sheriff's Department has a very secret undercover thing. I don't even know if you can find out if it exists, but I talked to them. It's called the Occult Squad. They told me in '73 that they found 35 bodies of girls in Los Angeles County that year, and I talked to them in December, that they knew to be human sacrifice, which they listed as rape cases to keep it from the public. The statistics that came in so far this year are close to 125, and the year's not even over. Now that's girls that have been used for human sacrifice. And if you'll notice, there's quite a few rape cases that happened around Halloween that are in the news right now. And from what we can find out, the circumstances that each death fits human sacrifice. But you'll never hear it, that's the reason. We turned in 4 different people that were responsible in the area that I knew about to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and they arrested all 4. They got convictions, and in every conviction they listed it as rape, killing. And they knew better. Yes. Yes, it is. It's listed in the 18th chapter of Deuteronomy as converting with necromancy or familiar spirits. Clairvoyancy, anything that is psychic is a counterfeit of God's power by the devil. And it was, okay, the woman who was giving fortunes in the 16th chapter of Acts, that was clairvoyancy. When Paul cast the demon out, she couldn't tell fortunes anymore. That settles it right there. Yeah. Superstition is a Christian form of witchcraft. Okay? Okay, she asked me if superstition was a form of witchcraft. It's a Christian form of witchcraft. One thing I want to throw at the young people real quick. In the occult stores, they don't sell Ouija boards, in most of them, in the serious ones. They call it a Christian instrument. They say Christians are the only ones stupid enough to use it. Witches know that the devil runs it. They know more than some of the Christians. Yeah. Okay. You want an answer on that? Oh, I'm glad you asked me about that. Yes, I do. Physical evidence. One, take the exorcism first. The rite that the Catholic Church uses for exorcism, they have changed a few words. Just, I think, about 6 words. Is the witchcraft rite of exorcism. It is 8,000 years old. The Catholic Church is not that old. Okay? Next, on the apparitions, it's the same thing as the Spiritualist Church of America or any of the witchcraft organizations. It's called auras. And if you'll notice, none of them are pure white. Now, coming out of the occult, I know the system of collars. And the principality, there's 7 of them. And all the demons under them go by the collar of their leader, their generals. And the occult demon, Regia, appears as a blue snake or a blue mist. I've heard thousands of reports, including Jean Dixon, that her guides, her spirit guides, familiar spirits, are blue in nature when they communicate with her. And, of course, the red is lust and so on. It's a long list. But the saints or apparitions, I want to get into this thing real quick. The Catholic Church's altar, except for the Atame or the knife, is the exact altar of witchcraft. And according to the reports I can get on the Nicene Council, most of the ministers at the Nicene Council that set that heresy up were from the Temple of Diana, which is witchcraft. So, everything, the bells, the incense, the whole ritual, their holy water is a salt water mixture. This comes from witchcraft, which they do exorcism with. Everything that they do comes out of witchcraft, and they can't get around it. Yeah. Okay. Did everybody hear that question? Okay. He wants me to explain the Council of 13. I'll explain what that is, you're probably wondering. And what their purpose or thrust is. Okay. All right. If you'll all, just give you a second, reach in your billfold. You can put it in the offering plate later. Reach in your billfold and take out a $1 bill real quick. We'll settle the whole thing. I'll let you ask your federal government later how this got on the $1 bill. Okay. On the back of the $1 bill, you'll see the crest with the pyramid in it. Now, Dr. Rasmussen has upstairs the whole crest. You only have the words left out of it on the block. But there are sections. His is a little behind time. There's a few new organizations. His dates back to the 1800s. But that pyramid in the Illuminati consists of 3 pyramids and a sphinx. But their crest is this crest. The Illuminati is the occult organization that we belong to. It means the light bearers. The witches call it Mariah, the conquering wind. But it's the capstone above. The eye is Lucifer. The triangle of the capstone is the tribunal of the Rothschild family, which is called the Holy Family. They lead the Illuminati. They would be Paul, Peter, for the Catholics, all the saints, and Mary, and everybody rolled into one, and the Pope. They are the voice. The doctrine of the occult teaches that Lucifer comes and sits at their dining room table. When they see the table, they leave 13 chairs out, and the 13th one is for Lucifer to sit in himself. They set him a plate and everything. Now, I've been there in the mansion, and I've seen this go on. And they, in turn, direct to the top block of that pyramid. And that top block is the Council of 13 of the Grand Druid Council, which I was a member of. Now, the Druid system of government is not that the politicians run everything. It is the same system that Rome had. The priests let whoever wants to rule the government, but the priest must rule the ruler. But the priest must rule the ruler. The priest must rule the ruler. Now, I'll let that sink on you for a while. And I want to throw this in. It will cause a lot of controversy, I'm sure, but it's a fact. Since the time of Woodrow Wilson, including him, there has never been a president of the United States that was not an Illuminati, that did not belong. Now, that'll shatter a few people's ideas about a Christian president right now, but it's a fact anyway. And the Grand Druids, although they're just supposedly everyday people like me, you look at me now, I'm this way. I was a different way when I was in witchcraft. And part of my authority was whatever governors, senators, or political people were in my area took direct political orders from me, which I in turn did not think up, but simply translated to them from the orders that we got from London, from the Rothschild family. Now that's the Council of 13. The thrust is that when I left in 72, they had a chart that said in 8 years, they would have the whole world. And from remembering that chart, I haven't seen one thing through the news media not happen on schedule according to that chart. I would say that that's about right. I would say the word today would be Maranatha, that he's coming real quick, because theirs is coming real quick. They have it. It's not that far away. Okay. Yeah. It'd be easier to give you the names who aren't. About 99%. Okay? The man who pulled me out of jail became an attorney general under Ford. It was William Saxby. Well, that gives you 2 names to start with. The best way is to find out who belongs to the CFR or who belongs to the CFR. Yeah. Not the way it's been written. It's a little ridiculous. I know I'm going to step on a few people's toes who have read about the Illuminati, but he asked me what part Zionism played in the Illuminati. Rothschild and a few people in the Illuminati were born Jews, but they're not Jews. You can get in the Word of God and find it. We got a little bit. The system is this. With the same books that proclaim that the Illuminati is a Jewish organization also proclaim that the Illuminati is a Luciferian organization. You can't have both. A true Jew believes in Yahweh. An Illuminati person, and I'm not a Jew, and I was a leader of the Illuminati, believes in Lucifer, the God of light, peace, love, blah, blah, blah, blah, and so on. It has nothing to do with the saints, because they might be a few Jews born, and they might have some ties with Zionism, bloodline, but the organization itself has nothing to do with Judaism at all. It is totally 100% Druid occult, and that's its purpose. In fact, the reason that the Rothschilds even still reside in London is because England is considered to the witches the same as Palestine is considered to us. It is the Holy Land. You take pilgrimages there. You stop off and kiss the stones on the Rothschild mansion for luck, and so on and so forth. If by some chance you happen to meet a Rothschild and he gives you a blessed sign or a blessed bee, then your whole life is set. It's that type of nature. But it has nothing to do. There is an interesting thing, though, I'd like to throw in. A lot of witches do wear the thing called the Star of David. David was long dead before that star was ever drawn. His son drew it. And it's called the hexagram, and the word to curse or to hex comes from the hexagram. And when witches practice magic, they draw a 5-pointed star to stand in, and they call demons up in the evil sign, what we call the Star of David. So before Christians start tying it around their neck, that's called the demon star, or the Death Star. And that's why it was drawn. For a few people that might be confused about the Solomon aspect, when he backslid, he became the most holiest person in the occult. Everything that we practice are based upon books that he wrote and pictures that he drew when he backslid. Well, including that exorcism rite you asked about. He wrote it. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll give you any. Okay, she asked if they're behind witchcraft programs that are coming on. I'm going to give you two quick examples. For one, I'm telling this across the country, the most disastrous film that has ever come out pro-witchcraft, thousands of people that are Christians are going to go watch and are watching. I was told by a bunch of Christian people across the United States in every city I went to, you got to go see this movie. There's no sex, there's no violence, there's, you know, it's just an old kind of, how would you put it, I can't think of the guy in the 30s that was a sequence, an outer space movie, Flash Gordon type picture. So I went and watched it. It used words and beliefs that are the innermost beliefs in witchcraft. They're not even the ones spoken of in the open. And witches don't call it witchcraft. They call it the Force. It's called Star Wars. And the whole thing is centered around, 2/3 of the movie is based on the Force. That you're stronger when you die, you're reincarnated, you receive guides from people who are dead. It's ESP. See, the biggest line about witchcraft is that it's not bad. It's neither good nor bad. It's the person that's good or bad. And this movie emphasized that a lot. That witchcraft was okay as long as you were a good person. So, adults, before you let them go. And the other one I want to hit real quick is, how many remember Bewitched? Probably one of the main reasons that witchcraft grew, it in Dark Shadows. Bewitched was written by a witch. The belief of witchcraft is you're born a witch, and that the mortals, or everyday people who don't practice, are dummies. You remember that in the thing? Well, they never got into, it was more of a comedy, they never got into witches' ceremonies or Sabbaths or anything like that. Last night a person asked me to watch who had gotten to read the script of the new one, Tabitha. So I watched it. It had witchcraft all through it. Real witchcraft. Ceremony, Halloween, everything. They're coming out stronger now. You better watch what your kids turn on the TV set. There hasn't been a witchcraft movie that had anything to do with Satan in the last 5 years that Satan didn't win openly in the picture. Tabitha? Bewitched. I know. I know. I've got reports on it. I was in witchcraft back then. I know what was going on. Yeah. Wasn't there a woman who had a lot to do with the show by the name of Louise Huebner? That's my foster mother. Yeah. What now? Usually through the Illuminati name's not used much anymore, except by everyday people who find out about it. Witches don't use it. The organization doesn't use it. And each country has its... the Mariah is the occult part, and the political part has a name in each country. And the United States is called the Council of Foreign Relations. That's mainly how they got into it. They mainly got into it because you can't become a president. You may think you elect a president, but I'm here to tell you, you elect whoever they put up. And when I was saved in 72, I got on a television broadcast that went throughout southern Texas, New Mexico, and so on. And they still got the tape down. It was on a talk show called the 7 Club in the morning. And I had a minister from the church there with me, Ed Human. And they asked me the political aspect that would be happening. Now, this was the election of Nixon and McGovern at the time. And I said a few things I don't want to really get into right now because we don't have the time. But one of the things I said was that the last election that would happen, the next one that was coming up, the one that just happened, the president that would be elected will be the last president elected in the United States. That doesn't mean it'll be the last election. It just means he'll be the last president. And that when he was elected, he was so important to be elected that the person who would run against him would also be Illuminati. That they wouldn't allow anybody else to get the nomination from the other party. And that he would purposely do everything during his campaign, the other party, in this case Ford, to throw that election. And if you'll look back on it, I think you'll see things that he did that lost many, many votes. And then he almost won anyway. I think it would have been disastrous if he had won to them, not to us. Yeah.
You're listening to the Investigative Journal. I'm your host, Greg Szymanski. 2 hours. 2 hours with great interviews all the time. We get into the news behind the scenes that the mainstream media refuses to cover. What a shame. Let me just update some things before I tell you who my guest is today. I've been promoting it all week, and we're going to get deep inside the family, the order, the Illuminati today for 2 hours. And you got to stay with us from the beginning to the end of this interview. Okay, we're back. It's 8 minutes after the hour, and we're going to get deep inside the Illuminati, the family, the order. We have a guest that was involved with this group, born into it for over 30 years, and her name is Svali. Svali, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Well, it's nice to have you here, and I know you don't give radio interviews, and I really want to thank you because I think it really does help the American people understand about this secret organization that you were born into. So I guess before we, I guess we can just start from the beginning and tell us right from the beginning, you were born into this from wealthy parents, and tell us about your training in this group and when you were a young child and then up into your orientation at the Vatican. Go ahead.
That's a pretty broad area, though, Greg. I mean, that could take hours, if you know what I mean.
Yes, but if you could just outline it for us.
Yeah. I mean, I was born in the group. I was born in Germany, came to the U.S. very young, and basically went through all the training that the group, all members of the group do undergo training to different degrees, depending on the role. By the time I was a teenager, I was a youth leader, and by the time I was 22, I became the youngest member of Leadership Council in San Diego County. And at that time, I was a head trainer. I was the sixth trainer. I eventually moved up to the second position. Mm-hmm. And when I was 12, I had mentioned with you the ceremony at the Vatican. That they really do make all leadership in the group undergo at some point.
Now, basically when you were growing up, I remember you told me that you were instilled at a young age. You were born to a very wealthy, well-to-do family. You moved back to the States. You were told at a very young age you were special. You were chosen, correct?
Well, they tell everyone in the group that they're special and chosen. And in fact, that's one of the things that made me very cynical when I was older, is that, you will never meet a person who's an Illuminati who's not been told and programmed for years that they're special, they're the only one that can do things for quote-unquote family. But I was told, yes, I would do great things for family one day. And the reason why I guess I can filter some of this with objective view is I know what my role in the group was, and it was over quite a significant number of other people. So I don't evaluate my role or specialness within the group, not so much by what I was told, but by what I did.
So you reached the age of 12, and then you're told by your parents you're going to an induction ceremony in the Vatican. Can you tell us how that happened and what occurred at that ceremony when you went there?
Okay. This isn't easy to talk about, as you know. When I was 12, I was flown over to Germany, and I was I'll call him the German father's house over there. And there was some preparation for a few days beforehand, and I was told that there would be a very important ceremony, and it was considered a sealing ceremony at that point. And basically, I was told a little bit about what I was expected to do during the ceremony. When we got there, we went to the Vatican. There's underneath the Vatican. There's a large room that I described to you when we talked before. It has 13 catacomb chambers leading into it and what they do is they, as you go down these steps into the room, you can see that it's almost circular, and so they're all around it, and they bring out the mummies from the catacombs, and they set them beside each one, and they say that the spirits of the fathers watching over the ceremony. And during the ceremony, there was a large table in the center of the room. It was on top of a huge golden pentagram, and they had a ceremony there. You know, they.
Okay, now how many other children were with you being inducted into the family or the order, as they call it?
There were 2 other children at that point, and but there were several adults too.
Okay.
See, the church also brings in adults to swear their allegiance too. Just so you know, I was told, and I don't know if this is true, but if you want to rise to a certain position within the Catholic Church hierarchy, you do have to go through that ceremony as well.
Okay, so you're down in this room with your parents weren't present.
No. The German father and the French father were. Yeah.
Okay, and at that point, tell our listeners what you witnessed.
Well, there was a table. It looked like dark glass in the center of the room. I mean, it was made of stone, but it was very shiny and dark and black. And it may have been something like obsidian or onyx. I'm not sure. You know, I'd have to. That's the only time I've seen stone like that. And it had like around the corners, they had like these gold, I guess, channels that you know, to collect fluids. And little boy was in the center of the table and drugged. I think he was drugged because he was very quiet. He didn't move or say anything during the ceremony.
This was a little 3 or 4-year-old boy.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then they continued to go ahead. They continued to do a child sacrifice.
Yes,
right in front of you.
They did. Yes. Yeah, I told you about that before. Yeah.
Now, afterwards, quite what a unbelievable experience for a youth. I mean, for a 12-year-old. I mean, I just what went through your mind? I guess when that happened. I mean,
I was terrified. I mean, I was absolutely horrified. I can't describe the terror you feel when you go through something like that.
And do you remember the words they were saying as this was going on?
The man was in scarlet. He was speaking in Latin, and basically he was saying, you know, please accept the sacrifice, you know, on this day. But then, you know, and then he said the sacrifice will seal the ceremony, and then he did it. Again, I was so terrified that. Have you ever been in a situation where your heart's racing, but you can't do anything, and so you're just kind of sitting there and you're kind of like fading in and out?
Well, you know, I can remember as a youth being frightened, but I don't think I've ever
no. All right. Well,
gone through anything quite like what you have.
Imagine your heart rate going up to about 220. You can't move, so you're kind of shaking, but trying like not to show it. Mm-hmm. And it, I mean, it was horrible. And I was keep thinking inside, I can't wait. Oh, I can't wait. I mean, you don't say this, but inside you're just kind of saying over and over, I can't wait till it's over. I can't wait till it's over. I can't wait till it's over. Afterwards, the man in scarlet, he had a huge golden ring on his hand, and he came over to the center of the room, and he had each of the people that were swearing that day, I had to go forward and kneel before him and kiss his ring and swear my allegiance to the new order, to the new world order, until my death.
Now, at that point, you are escorted out.
Yes. Yeah. After the ceremony was all over. I mean, the other people also did theirs as well. You know, they had to swear their allegiance too. And then
they were what, the same age? They were the same age as you?
The 2 children were, but there were also 3 adults that went forward and did the same. And afterwards, we were told, may the same to you or worse occur should you ever break this oath.
So it's basically, imagine at that age, and you weren't really prepped for this, were you? I mean, you were told there was a ceremony, but nothing, you didn't expect anything like this, from what I gathered talking to you.
It was very difficult to go through, just because the sense of horrific oppression down there, too, was the worst. I mean, I've gone through some ceremonies in my life in the Illuminati. You do go through them. But I have to say that in my experience, this was the worst, just because I can't explain the amount of darkness in a room like that, just of pure evil. And unless you've ever been in a seeing oppression, I mean, it's just horrible. It wasn't just what happened, but just, I mean, the oppression. And I'm a Christian now, and I know the difference now between when there's evil present, oppression, or when God's love is present and joy and peace, which is the exact opposite of what was in that room.
Now, you know what I find quite interesting about this? About 25 years ago, I was a reporter and a freelance writer in Rome, and I spent 6 years there. I walked through the Vatican many, many times, hundreds of times, covered the papal addresses, things like that. And during that time, I was there during a Vatican scandal, which involved the church bank and other things, members of the Illuminati, the Freemasons. I was approached by a woman on Via Veneto. I'll never forget this. Rome's a small town, and people knew I was covering stories about the secret societies, things like that, because I had to ask people. Well, this woman came up to me and told me similar stories. She wasn't quite as specific because she couldn't handle it. She would break out crying, and had tried to commit suicide twice because she couldn't get out of the Illuminati. She was a member, she was, again, born into it, a very wealthy northern Italian family. And she told me basically the same ceremony took place with her. And so when I started talking to you, I wanted to relay that to you and to also relate to my listeners that I heard about this 25 years ago from a woman by the name of Maria and many other people, several other people in Italy that I talked to. I was never able to locate, or really, probably for my own safety, never find out what happened. But again, Svali's corroborating a story that I heard about 25 years ago. We'll get back after this break with this incredible story about a member of the Illuminati who's now out of the group and safe on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal. I'm your host, Greg Szymanski. We're talking to Svali, a member of the family, the Order, the Illuminati for over 30 years. Svali, you leave the induction ceremony, you walk out into the Vatican courtyard, and what do you leave with one of the fathers, I believe. What did he tell you then?
At that point, he just told me to never forget that, he told me that I performed well during the ceremony because I didn't scream or, pass out or anything like that. So he said you did very well, and he was pleased. And then we went and stayed at a home nearby, a local, it must have been a local person. I didn't know them. We spent the night there before we went back to Germany.
Okay, and what about the other people during the ceremony? How did they handle themselves? Do you remember?
I'm going to say, unfortunately, I'm so, and when you're in that kind of situation, the last thing they're thinking about sometimes is what the other people are doing. I was just so trying to not, lose it myself. And that I do know that, no one screamed or shouted, or anything like that. Everyone was quiet. I think to say dead silence is, unless the person was spoken to, is true, or unless they had to go forward and kiss the ring.
All right, let's move on. I think the question I wanted to ask you, and this is such a wide subject. I've had a chance to talk to you a number of days, and I've done some stories about it. You go back home. You're 12 years old. You said you were schooled into 12 disciplines. So your life begins. And now you're in some type of organization that is very different than what most people experience. But tell us, I guess what I want to do is leave it open to you to begin. You've written so in depth on this story. I'm just going to give you the microphone and let you begin and tell the listeners what you think is important about your original training, about the group, and about many things that I know people want to know about the Illuminati. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, Greg, first I want to say that my purpose in talking about this is not to glorify evil, because there are very wicked people out there, very powerful people. And I don't want to at all magnify their power, but I do want people to know that this is real, that these people exist, that people who say there are people out there that are involved in this activity it really happened. I also, because I know that there are children being hurt in the group every day, and that's my motivation for coming forward. I don't like giving interviews for obvious reasons. I'm willing this one time to lay aside my thoughts of personal safety because these people need to be stopped. It needs to be stopped.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, go ahead.
And normally children in the group are born into it. While the Illuminati very rarely does outside recruitment, that's not their main method. It's just passed down generationally from father to son and mother to daughters to children until the whole family line is in it. Throughout the centuries, people have tried to escape, but a lot of times they were either poisoned, murdered, or set up to look like a suicide. They don't like it when people leave, and they try to make it very difficult, simply because it looks bad. They go through an enormous amount of training from the time you're an infant. You undergo indoctrination. And when I say indoctrination, I don't just mean like cult programming so much as watching your parents and seeing what they do. My parents modeled their behavior. To them, the group was very important to growing up. I saw that 3 times a week, everything was dropped to attend to the activities. Okay?
Okay.
What a lot of, and after, through, basically the training process is designed to help you take on your adult role in the group. The Illuminati covers so many levels, though, too. It goes all the way from what most people think of as like a satanic coven type thing at the very low local level, all the way through. It's a huge, enormous business corporation. At the mid-levels, you have people overseeing finances and administration, who are overseeing, I mean, these people are making a lot of money through gun running, through white slavery, prostitution, pornography. I mean, these people are making a lot of money through gun running, through white slavery, prostitution, pornography, gun running, through white slavery, prostitution, pornography. They have links and ties to the mafia left and right. And, in fact, the mafia are afraid of them. Yeah. Well, think about it. I mean, you know, but because they know that you don't cross the members of the group. They have a very spiritual orientation. They're not satanic, though. They're Luciferian, which is a difference. But the ultimate goal of their spiritual philosophy and their steps of discipline is they believe that should you complete all of your training, that you become a god. That is their actual end goal. Is they believe in the achievement of godhood, of the luminous philosophy, through different means, through what they call enlightenment or illumination, which is how they got their name. They're international. In Europe, there's 12 fathers who sit that represent the different nations of Europe. They are very expectantly awaiting he who is to come. And during that ceremony in the Vatican, I on my knees, I had to swear my allegiance to serve he who is to come. They believe
so, can you, I have to take a break. We'll continue with the massive organization. Your role as a mid-level person in the Illuminati on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal, and I'm talking with Svali. Svali, why don't we just pick it right up where we left off at the break? You were telling us about this hierarchy that starts with 12 fathers. Can you just run that down for us so people know exactly how this group's organized?
Sure. At the top levels, it's in Rome. That's the center or the heart of the Illuminati. That's where the power base is. And that's why all leadership must wear fealty in Rome, because that's considered the core of the spiritual center of the universe, is how they view it. From there, in Europe, there are 12 fathers, one for each country in Europe. When I was younger, too, I had to also meet with the fathers at one point and kiss their rings and go through another ceremony of allegiance to them as well. There's, in the Illuminati, the European fathers, though, rule over what are called the different houses. For instance, if you're from Germany, then you belong to the German house. If you're from France, you belong to the French house. They call them houses. UK, Russia, Poland, Belgium, Spain, Italy, and others. From there, America was considered a mission field for them. And in the 1600s, Pittsburgh became the first port of entry for them, and that's where they first settled. And so that's why it's still considered a spiritual power base for the group on the East Coast in the U.S.
You know, and I did want to mention one thing. And a caller or a listener or a reader of your stories sent me an email, said, Greg, check into the reason why President Bush, right after being elected, went to Pittsburgh and talked to a Masonic group there. I found that quite interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it's the spiritual power base for the group. From there, it spread out, of course, to the Atlantic seaboard and then throughout the nation. And while the nation is divided into many regions, multiple regions, 7 main regions, the East Coast region has its spiritual power base in Pittsburgh, but the administrative power base is in Alexandria, Virginia. That's where they administer the finances during the day-to-day operations. The West Coast, or the West region, or west of the Mississippi, has its power base in the San Diego area.
And that's where you spent a lot of time, correct?
Yes. I was sent from the Alexandria Council, sent me to San Diego to help them out.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's see. Those are the two, of course, main regions, and then each of those regions are divided into sub-regions. And so then you have your regional council sitting over those and overseeing activities. I mean, if you can think of the structure of a large multinational corporation, that's really how the Illuminati is structured. Then beneath each of the regional councils are your local councils. They call them sister groups or your local councils, and then you have your local groups under those as well, or what they call the sister groups. So any major metropolitan city could have anywhere from 5 to 15 groups, depending on the size population base.
Now, you were saying that how many people are in this group in America, about, from your estimate of knowing a lot of this stuff? Go ahead.
Pure Illuminati, I'd say about 1%, give or take.
So it's a fairly big organization, correct?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Now they're, just in the their goal, basically, just give us the broad overview goal, and then I want to get into some of these, your role in it, and some of these ways that the Illuminati makes money that you learned about. Go ahead.
Yeah. When you say to rule the world, it almost sounds laughable, like, yeah, right. I think people get ideas of, like, thinking in the brain wanting to rule the world, but really that is their goal. They believe that they are the intelligent leaders, and they believe that the rest of the world are sheep who need wise. They see themselves as wise leadership, so they believe that their goal is to rule the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but at the same time, they have ways of doing this. Their main methods of doing so are behind the scenes. They believe in infiltration of the media, of education, and of government. Those are the 3 areas, and of the financial system. And they've successfully done quite a bit of all 4 throughout Europe and the U.S., as well as other countries.
Now, you said that you're basically, the Illuminati is divided into about 6 or 7 different groups, and everyone is born into a group. Can you outline what those groups are?
Well, no, it's all one group, but it just has different levels,
Yeah, that's what I mean, like the sciences, the government.
The Illuminati is divided into different branches of learning, and these branches include sciences, military, government, leadership, scholarship, and spiritual. Those are the 6 branches of learning. And while all children need to undergo some training or teaching in each area, as they get older, they begin profiling you from infancy, and they know where your aptitudes and abilities are. Then you really go into, most people specialize in 1 branch or possibly 2 branches of learning.
And you were involved in what branch?
I was heavily involved in sciences, and also, to some degree, I did some spiritual as well, but mainly sciences.
Just to backtrack 1 minute, these 12 disciplines, as a child you were rigorously trained in this, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what were those disciplines? I mean, if just you don't have to go through each one of them, but what primarily were you taught?
I think the best way would be to just give you an example of just one type of training that they do.
Okay.
When I was 2 years old, I was left in a room for probably a 24-hour period. When you're that age, it's hard to estimate, but it was a long time. I know that the sun did go around at least once. You know, it wasn't just like a few hours. And at that age, when you're 2 and you're left completely alone without food and water, you're terrified. And at the end of the time, I was just dying of thirst. I remember I've never been so thirsty in my entire life. And my mother walked into the room, because a lot of times they have the children, you know, or the parents as train the children at these early ages. And there was a table in the middle of the room, and I'm sitting at it, and she sits at it, and she brings me this cold pitcher of water, and she starts pouring it. I said, "Mama, I want a drink of water." And she slapped me out of the chair. And I remember crying, and I'm like, and as I'm crying, and she's drinking the water in front of me, then she leaves. She takes a pitcher of water, and a couple of hours later, she came back in and did the same thing. I said, Mama, I want water. And she slapped me, across the room. And after this had happened about 3 times, luckily I was bright enough that by the 3rd time she came in, I remember crying violently. I just looked at her. I didn't ask. And after she got up and left with the pitcher, then a man came into the room. He said, "You did very well that time." And then he gave me a drink of water. And I've always, that was part of the learning not to want stage. And looking back on it, I realize now as an adult that the purpose of that training was to teach me not to recognize my own physiological needs and respond to them, but to look to outside people to tell me what I wanted or needed.
Now, you basically, you told me that you led kind of a dual life in the Illuminati. I mean, that's basically how they function. They have a day job, and then at nighttime you're quite busy sometimes with the cult's activities, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What I wanted to get into, if you were talking about these groups, I remember I mentioned to you, you said you had meetings 3 times a week, and I said, well, what about if I wanted to go and visit? Maybe do a story about them. What would happen, or would I be able to find one of these meetings that were going on where in your area of Escondido?
Well, no, because of the security measures. And you really don't want to show up unannounced at a meeting if you could get through their security, because chances are you would never make it out alive. Let's just say that a sudden auto accident would occur and be reported in the papers. Unfortunate accident, man accidentally runs into a tree. I'm serious. But the security that they have during group meetings is so intense that it would be very difficult. They have security at the 1 mile perimeter, the 3 mile perimeter, and the 5 mile perimeter. They have 3 people assigned. Usually one's like up in a tree where you can't see him at the 5 mile perimeter, and then you have one person who's standing, who looks like a security guard for this state, because these are often large, wealthy states, which is appropriate, and he's dressed in the uniform. And the 3rd person's standing hidden behind a tree. As cars come through, and they come through the gates, because remember, these are gated estates. If it's not someone on their approved license checklist, they'll stop the car, and it's just like at a military installation. They'll say, "Can I help you? Are you lost?" Their goal is to delay the person. Now, if a person saying, "Oh, is this blah blah blah," and they're just asking directions, they'll give them directions. They'll be very pleasant and send them on their way to where they're supposed to be going. But if they are acting as if they want to go further into the state, and this is not an okay person, then the person, they will say, "All right, well, let's." You say he's not expecting you. That's a code word. That tells the person either up in the tree, hidden, or else hidden further back. They radio ahead and they say, "Unexpected visitor." At that point, everyone has been trained to pick up and leave immediately within 5 minutes. No traces of the activity.
So this is some of the methods they go through so you don't get caught. I know that you wrote an article about why the occult doesn't get caught, and that's pretty specific. I mean, you have so much stuff here, and we can't get into it all in 2 hours. So please pick and choose what you think is most important. But I found that to be interesting, why the cult doesn't get caught. Is there anything in just a brief time you could explain to us that?
Well, their security, their money, their influence. Some of these people even own newspapers. Imagine trying to get a article published, disclosing. There's a lot of reasons why they don't get caught, because that's the first thing people ask. But then my next question is, how many child pornographers are out there that the police have been chasing for years and have never found or caught?
Correct.
And they're not even members of a secret organization. They're just trying to hide, So when
now
you think about, okay.
Yeah. You are a mid-level person in this organization, a head trainer. We're going to get into those specifics in the next hour. But, what did you learn about the infiltration of this group into all of our different areas of government, media? They're basically at the high levels of most of our financial institutions also, correct?
Yeah.
And that is a great way to pursue their goal. And I guess I got to ask you this: how come things are moving a little bit faster in America now? I remember back in the '80s when I was confronted with this. When I came back home, I didn't really see this kind of New World Order movement, all this different symbolism that you see now. What is going on, just for our listeners, right now? Why are things stepped up since 9/11?
I believe it's because they can see the fulfillment of their goal of. See, I'm going to sound very cynical now, and please forgive me for this, but see, their goal is to rule the world, and personally, I believe that they do. It's just not open yet, and they see now preparing people for when they disclose it themselves openly. Does that mean that they can't be stopped? I believe they could. I believe they'd take a miracle because of the amount of infiltration I've seen at all levels of society and the world. These people and women have a lot of money. They have a lot of influence. And your average person has no idea of how much that is going on behind the scenes that no one understands. But with that said, so basically, I think that they're already there. They just aren't open. These people just don't know what they're doing. If they did, I think the average person would be horrified to know how much is going on behind the scenes that people really don't know.
Yeah, and the point of this interview, I had two goals in this interview.
But I don't want to sound despairing, because I'm also a strong Christian. I have faith in God, and I believe that through prayer and through people knowing that, I would like them to be stopped. I just don't know at this point, how do you take on the financial institutions of the world, the major oil enterprises of the world? That's the question.
Yeah, it's a difficult question. Now, you're in the mid-level of this group. You worked your way up to a head trainer, correct?
Yeah.
Now, what did you learn? Before we get into the specifics, you outline in some of your writings the big money-making, the ways this group makes its money. Can you go over and outline some of those methods?
Again, if you can think of an illegal activity, they're probably involved at some point. Maybe not overtly at the point of where the actual money is first changing hands. But when you have child pornography, prostitution, white slavery, gun running, gambling, then at some point where the money is changing hands, buffered by about 4 layers of people, there's going to be probably someone from the Illuminati involved at that point. These guys have their fingers in everything.
Now, go ahead.
But they also use legitimate means. They launder their money. When you have a lot of money, you have to do something with it. And so what these men don't come in and say, "Hi, I'm a member of the Illuminati, and I want to run your bank." But what they'll do is they'll quietly come in and become a quiet investor, start buying up shares, and over a period of maybe almost a lifetime, they will get a controlling interest in the bank. Or else become a very, and maybe in their son's lifetime, because that's the other thing about the Illuminati. The Illuminati do not see it as it must happen now in my lifetime. These people have goals that last for a century or 2 centuries. They're very, very patient.
And that's why the specific training of the children is so important, correct?
Yes. Yes, it's to teach you patience. Everyone knows growing up in the group, they know that we may not see the coming order disclosed or open or revealed in our lifetime, but our children or our grandchildren may. So they will spend their entire life trying to bring about the goals of the organization.
Incredible. So now you're in the mid-level, and I can see now where they use the programming techniques, the different mind control techniques.
Yeah.
We had a minute before the break, just kind of what our interest about how you, what your specific role was.
Well, they did a lot of what you might call human experimentation, and they had a lot of research protocols going on. So one thing I did was to supervise the research going on. I was teaching the younger trainers and head trainers how to do things more efficiently, how to do their job well, but also reviewing their research reports for errors or problems. Eventually, I became kind of a consultant. If a problem occurred, or if they didn't know how to install something, or if they needed assistance, I would help them with problem solving as well.
Okay, Zvali, I'm going to have to take a break. We'll be back in 3 minutes. We'll continue on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal. I got a short 4-minute segment here, then we'll take a break and come back with Zvali for a whole another hour. We're talking about some of the jobs in the Illuminati, the practical daily jobs that these members of this group who are infiltrated in America heavily take what they do. Now, one thing I find interesting, Zvali, is, in the media, I'm not going to name names or anything else. I don't have any specific information, but I find it interesting doing some background checks, and a lot of the top media people in our country, they all come from these very wealthy families, and that's not the typical MO for a journalist. A journalist is somebody grows up on the street, wants to talk to people. I mean, I can think of Jimmy Breslin, guys who never went to college, didn't know how to type, and just got in there and took their tie off and started writing stories. But, as you look at the media now, these are all these silver spoon kids growing up with silver spoons. I find that quite interesting. How deeply infiltrated, from your knowledge, are they in our media?
Wow. I do know fairly deeply. I remember that when I was in San Diego, on Leadership Council during meetings, they would laugh about how people had no idea of how much they were being influenced and didn't even know it. They found that kind of amusing, which is, that's the mindset of people in the group. They're like, the sheep has no idea that they're being led by the nun. And they find it amusing because they show it as evidence of this. I'm sorry, I'm just describing what they say. I don't agree with it now, but they saw it as evidence of the stupidity of the average person, that they have no idea. I'm not saying that every news story or every newscast story is a member of the group, by no means. But they specifically do teach and train and educate children that show an aptitude for the media, because they want that. And if a person has a bright, charismatic personality and presents well, then that's just that child will go into that if they have the verbal communication and other skills required.
Correct, and that could explain why a lot of our stories really never get covered outside of the influence they have financially and the ownership of the media.
Absolutely not by coincidence.
What's that?
Not at all a coincidence.
Yeah, so that's a good idea why, folks, you're not getting the news from those outlets. We have not only in our government, it explains, a lot of things. Why? Look at the war in Iraq. Look at the evidence there that shows that it was wrong. Look at what they're doing in Iran right now. It's incredible. All this stuff. It's pretty obvious, people. There's something behind it. Zvali is here trying to explain this organization from her knowledge, and it's quite a story. I know this idea. You were involved as a trainer, mind programming. This is just. I'm looking at some of the chapters in a book you have yet to publish. We're talking about brainwave, color control, metal, jewel programming linked to stories and movies. It goes suicidal program. In just a minute here before our break, can you kind of break down what you learned about the importance? Well, we got to take a break, Zvali. Sorry. We're going to do that quickly. Then we'll get back to you. We're talking to Zvali regarding her role as a head trainer in the Illuminati and the American Illuminati. We'll be back on the Republic Broadcasting Network in 2 minutes. Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal. One more hour, we're talking to Zvali, and she was a head trainer in the Illuminati. Zvali, what type of programming do they actually teach you, and how do you learn these different techniques?
Well, you're taught from childhood on. My training in how to be a programmer was very young. I was mentored by another programmer at the age of 5 by a doctor at George Washington University, and he not only did he do the programming on me, but he also taught me how to do it to others. The types of programming, again, that could be a whole 10-hour segment to go into depth. Just briefly, from the time a child's an infant, all through their life, basically, they're tested, they're profiled. The trainers can create a psychological profile, and then they update it frequently. And basically, they're trying to install in the child the ability to obey, loyalty to the group, and the ability to do their job within the group. Now, those jobs vary in complexity. I mean, you may have, on one side, a child trained to be a prostitute. On the other end, you may have a child trained to become a governmental figure, which is a lot more complex programming. But as long as the loyalty to the group is instilled first, and that's the first and foremost programming always installed, then no matter what their eventual role is, they will remain loyal, and that becomes their first loyalty. Whatever nation, whatever their public role in life is, their first and foremost loyalty will be to the group and to serve its goals. Whether they know, a lot of times the goal there too is to be able to help the child create that complete division between their day role and their night role. So a pleasant, charming, wonderful, kind person in the daytime could be an absolutely cold, ruthless person at night. Or during the day, it's also during the day they do it. You may have a housewife with children who goes out and completes a courier job for the group, and no one would ever suspect her. This frumpy-looking old housewife with a baby in a car seat is actually carrying some valuable documents. Or again, the first and foremost, though, is they want to instill loyalty. And they want to discourage people from questioning orders. They really don't want you questioning that, and they want you to obey their directives. And should people show signs of not doing that, then they go in for tips. Actually, people are being programmed all through their life. We used to call them tune-ups, and it's a lifelong process for members of the group.
So, we have a minute here before our break, and then we'll get back and get in depth in some of these areas. But what went wrong with you? The dropout rate probably is very low, considering the number of, considering the training. But what went wrong with you? They somehow missed something.
When I was very young, I absolutely believed in the goals of it. You never saw a more loyal group member. I thought that they were saving the world. I thought that they were doing a wonderful thing. But the older I got, I started to see the methods that were being used were so wrong, and that the end did not justify the means. I became increasingly cynical, partly because I saw what I was doing to people. I was lying to them. I was manipulating them. I was telling them things that weren't true. And I remember questioning this, thinking, I was told lies as a child too then. I was manipulated. And finally, things like that, you start to question as an adult. The things you believe.
Okay. All right, we're gonna take a break, Zvali. We'll be back in 3 minutes on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal. Zvali, I wanted to ask you a question before we get into how you finally left the group and what happened to you afterwards, your life now. Tell us, you wrote an article, it was kind of interesting, A Day in the Life of a Trainer for the Illuminati. Tell us kind of what you went through in a normal day in your role at the Illuminati. Go ahead.
Okay. Basically, I would get up. At the time that I described in that article, I was teaching at a Christian school. And so I would get up, I would get my 2 children, I dressed ready for school, look just like a normal mom, go through the day, come home, we'd have little friends over and play and stuff like that, and then, have dinner. I was a good mom. I was your average American housewife. On the surface.
Okay.
But underneath the surface, then my husband and I would remind each other on nights when there was a meeting. And then what we would do is when we go to sleep, I had programming in place that would allow me to wake up within 10 minutes of a specified time. So if I knew there was a meeting that night, I would wake up 10 minutes before it was time to, get ready and go. A lot of times we would even go to bed with our clothes on. And I never thought that was abnormal,
Mm-hmm.
I thought everyone went to bed with their clothes on. Didn't even question it, on nights when we had meetings. I thought, oh, it's warmer. And then we get up and go and drive to the meeting. And I was also very involved in military in San Diego. In fact, the group has a lot of military orientation. And so a lot of times I would take the kids to their area. There's the area where the kids would go and change. They had a room, and we would have, baskets of clothes, and we'd change our clothing. You'd take out your clothing, it had your name on it, and put on your uniform or whatever you wore that night. And the kids would wear these little miniature military uniforms. And then they would go out and do their training exercises. They were learning how to march, how to shoot. All kids in Illuminati know, at least in that area, know how to take apart a gun, put it together, and shoot with deadly accuracy by the age of 8 years old. Martial arts, there's a lot of martial arts training. Sometimes I helped supervise that, or fill in if a military trainer was, because you had to know how to do it. Everyone had to be. There's a lot of cross training, but most of the time I supervised the training. I would be working on implementing programming or what we call tuning up. Reinforcing previously installed programming in adults. At that point, I was normally supervising the younger trainers. They would be doing it, and I would be there watching and making sure they did it correctly. Or else I would be also evaluating whether sometimes every once in a while we'd be working on something that was somewhat experimental, and then I would be taking a more active role, assessing the person's responses to the new protocol, recording it, and if there was any difference between established parameters for that protocol or expected responses, I'd be flagging that.
Give me an example of someone that you were working on. How would they be introduced? What would be the reason? Are they in the military? How does someone get sent to you?
No, these were all members of the group.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I can tell you that in San Diego, 20% of the active members of the group were active military.
Okay.
Okay, and think military intelligence. Think high-ranking officials, colonels, commanders. My ex-husband was a lieutenant commander in the Navy, getting ready to become a commander, okay?
All right.
These are not stupid people.
So you're basically involved in working on the programming of the members involved, too?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No. We didn't program people that weren't members of the group. You cannot install significantly traumatic mind control programming in a person who is not a member of the group. Now, there are certain, now what you can do is what we call passive programming, which is basically through media means. You can set, if someone's watching a television program, they go immediately into alpha state. Everyone in the group, even the baby in the group knows that because these people are very much into behavioral psychology, and that's a trance state almost, a very relaxed state where messages can be implemented. And that's why I very strongly suggest people be very careful about the TV shows they watch. That's all I'll say about that. But no, you cannot take an adult who's not a member of the group and do what we did to them. They would go psychotic or they wouldn't survive it, probably. They wouldn't be able to psychologically handle it.
Tell us some examples of what you were doing, program techniques.
Sometimes it would involve, normally it would start with a hypnotic induction. or even sometimes we'd inject the medication. A lot of times, especially young children, have a lot of fear when they're going into programming, but adults did too. We want them to relax. We'd give them a very short-acting medication to relax them. We would then invoke a hypnotic state in them. We would then, like if it's an older person, I'd be checking the codes already installed. If I was getting ready to install programming in it, in like a young child, I would tell them, explain to them very patiently exactly the behavior expected. I'd say, I want you to do this and this and this. I'd break it up into steps, and I'd say, first we're going to practice this. I would show the child what I want them to do. I'd model it. I would then tell the child, do it. The child would then do it, okay. But normally they won't do it well the first time, so she or he would get shocked. That was called, because the group very much uses what they call positive and negative reinforcement. Okay, if the child did not do it perfectly the first time, they're shocked. That's the negative reinforcement. Then I'd say, do it again. They would show me the behavior. Now, at this point, we start associating the behavior with an external stimulus or cue, too. Now, a lot of times the child is, if this is a behavior, though, that we want associated with a specific code, the child will often been traumatized very heavily first to create a fragmentation in their personality. And then the code, and then the behavior and the associated cue are given. Like, you might hear a tone like, bing, bing, bing. All right, I want you to do this. Bing, bing, bing. The child hears the tone, they get up, and they do the behavior. Once they can perform it perfectly, they're rewarded with praise, good job, or a hug. Children like hugs, or something like that. Then you do it over and over and over. That's why trainers have to be very patient people. Because then maybe after the child's done it 50 times, then they hear the cue, they get up, they do it. It's not even a conscious, it's reflexive. At that point, it's considered installed. For very, very important programming, I'm talking about like M-level assassin programming, because we did train people how to assassinate people, and that's a whole other topic that I don't want to go into here.
Okay.
We would then do a ritual to heal the programming afterwards. Okay.
You know something, I was just looking at some of your articles, and one was Christmas in the Cult, just to get off on a different subject here.
Sure.
And you say this is quite different for you when you were growing up than it is for most children. Can you just kind of briefly tell us what you meant by that?
Yeah, I mean, we had trees and presents and things like that, but for most children, Christmas is just happy time, you know, lots of presents. But in the group, some very high ceremonies that are celebrated. Several times, many times, I flew to Germany, and there was no Santa Claus. They had a figure called Father Yule, who represents Christmas there, but he is not the kind of benevolent Santa that you see here. This is a man with a golden scepter, dressed in a white robe and a golden sash around. And I was once at the German father's house where there was a gathering of children and adults, and Father Yule was present, and he raises the scepter and basically strikes down the child in front of everyone.
Oh, my God.
I know.
Strikes down the child?
Yes, he struck down the child with his scepter, and that is not what you call a happy Christmas, you know.
No.
Now, at the same time, yes, we did have tree, and, you know, and fruitcake and all that, and decorate the house, but there's another side to Christmas.
You know, I'm just listening, and I just can't believe, you know, we got leaders in our country that have probably gone through this kind of stuff. I mean, it's just incredible, this group. I mean, I know they've been around for a long, long time, thousands of years, and gone through, came here, George Washington was a 33rd degree Mason, and we go on. The question, you know, I want you to understand what, just from my point of view, I just wonder how, you know, you write a story at the end of the Illuminati. How do we get rid of these people? I know you're out of it. You couldn't take it anymore, but do you think we can inspire more mid-level people to just leave like you, so they have no one to do this kind of insidious, crazy programming and lifestyle? What do you think?
Well, I believe that as strongly as a Christian, that it's a spiritual warfare as well as a emotional and psychological warfare. I believe that by the grace of God, but I will also say that when I was in the group, a lot of the members are not happy. you will have people in the group that are there because they love it, because they believe in the goals, they're totally dedicated. But to be honest, I also knew as many people who would have left in a minute if they thought that they could get out and make it. And
about your husband, just to break in, then go back to that. Do they marry you to somebody in the group, or is that forced on you?
No, in the group, marriages are always arranged. In my experience, in my 38 years in the group, I never knew of a couple in the Illuminati that did not have an arranged marriage. It's
Let me just mention a couple that I suspect: Clinton and Bill and Hillary.
Oh well, yeah. Yes, definite.
Yes,
and
Bill.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And a lot of times these marriages are arranged for compatibility, but also for bloodlines, to bring the right bloodlines together.
Okay, good. We're going to be back in 3 minutes. I want to continue this, and then we're going to get into Zvali's life after the Illuminati on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal. I'm your host, Greg Szymanski, and let me tell you, as an interviewer, someone who has researched the Illuminati for a long time. It started way back when I was a young reporter in Rome. It's a whole different ballgame when you're actually talking to someone with experiences like this. It takes it out of that realm of what is quasi-fiction fact into the realm of reality, and it's really shocking. And I'll be honest with you, this is a story that, folks, you have to listen to, because this is going on in our country. All the things you're seeing regarding our rights being taken away, the police state, the war in Iraq, 9/11, all these things have to do with this powerful group. And Zvali, we're talking about mid-level people, then we're going to talk about some of the lower-level people. I'm interested who they are. But I imagine a lot of these, you said they weren't happy, but a lot of them probably stay because it's very, it's a very very lucrative way to live. I imagine you from wealthy families.
Oh, yeah. In fact, and that's the main thing, that's one of the factors that keeps people in. The reason more people don't leave is because leaving means giving up your husband, your children, your entire family on both sides, your money, and basically for a lot of people leaving the group, it means giving up everything and starting out penniless and alone. And not only that, but then you're combating internal programming to recontact, to go back, to be loyal, to be a good member. And I've known many people that have tried to leave and went back because they just couldn't take it.
Do you want to take a phone call right now to break it up?
Sure.
Okay, Marilyn in California. You're on the Investigative Journal, Marilyn.
Yes, I've been just sort of caught part of this. I lost part of it. I'm listening on the Internet, but I didn't quite catch, how did this woman become involved in this Illuminati training?
Go ahead. Can you explain that, Zvali?
Yeah, I was taught it from early childhood. I was mentored into it. Trainers in the group are mentored. You work with older adults, and they show you, and you are given increasing responsibility until by the time you're in your teens, you are basically doing adult training responsibilities. You've been taught for years.
Parents put you in it, or?
Yes, they were members.
Oh, I see. So it comes down through the one parent to another.
Yeah, or from both.
Are they private schools?
Do what?
Are these private schools?
Well, when my children were schooled at private Christian schools, they were all Illuminati.
Oh, you're saying that the Christian schools are Illuminati?
Some of them are. Not all, but some. No, the ones that my children were in were specifically. But no, there's a lot of good Christian schools that have nothing to do with the group, but some can be. Now, I went to a public school, but what's interesting is out of 3 public schools I went to as a young child, 2 have burned down. So there's no access to any school records.
I'll be darned.
Marilyn, just to get you up to speed, you're born into this, then you're trained as a young child, you go through an induction ceremony in the Vatican, and this is going on with 1 to 2% of our population, according to Zvali, very serious in all levels, government and everything else. Go ahead, Marilyn, you have another question?
Yeah, when you say the Vatican, now that is not a Christian religion. Okay, so I mean, I'm a Christian. But we do not look at Catholics as a Christian religion. We look at them as the precursor of the New World religion. So with
Well, you know, if I may just break in, I grew up a Catholic. I don't get involved in the splicing of the religions. I'm basically stating that when I started researching the Illuminati as a reporter in Rome, and I realized there was a bad portion of the church, I looked at it. I had to deal with the evil and the good, and so that's the way I reconciled it: the evil within the Catholic Church. At the high level of the Vatican, which seeps down into many, many areas. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I won't argue that point. I don't agree with it, but it sounds like you have become possibly born again to get out of this. Could I be correct in that?
Yes, Marilyn, very much. Now, first, I do want to say I am not slamming the Catholic Church or the average Catholic. I have many good friends that are Catholics, that are strong Christians. I became a Christian, and that's the only way I could get out. But just so you know, though, too, a lot of card-carrying Illuminists, well, we don't really carry cards, but I'm using that term.
Yes.
Are members of the Baptist Church, are members of Pentecostal churches. In fact, I was on the worship team for a Wesleyan church in San Diego in my day life. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just very, very confused. I mean, I think this is interesting, and as far, you know, many people say that the Catholic Church will be the forerunner of the new world religion. There's some very good books out. In fact, I think you may have interviewed one of these men, the Grand Plan Design by John Daniel.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember that?
Sure.
Yeah. But
Go
the
ahead.
average Catholic has no idea of what's going on in the Vatican.
Yeah. I think that's interesting that the average Catholic would not go what's going on. That's just my take on it.
Well, I'll tell you something. As an average Catholic going to Rome my first time in 1980, I didn't know what was going on, and I grew up as a Catholic, went to Notre Dame High School. It was quite a learning experience for me.
Why do Catholics, when they find out how evil the church is, stay in it? I mean, do they really... Why would they want to stay in it? That's what bothers me. I know some good people that are like that, and I don't get it.
Well, the only answer, there's I don't know. I mean, there are many Catholics that aren't actively practicing.
Yeah. Thank
But
you.
anyway, we'll leave that for another time. Thanks a lot, Marilyn. We'll be back on the Investigative Journal in 3 minutes with Zvali. Okay, you know, they're not going to get me, that's for sure. My house is anti-illuminated. It's not going to happen, folks. And, you know, just to end that, Svali, before I get back to you, just to end that conversation we had with Marilyn about Catholicism, I look back and I really thank my dad. And I do it in kind of a way, I'm just thinking about it now, I didn't know what the church was about. But, you know, something strange did happen when I was young. My mom died, and I was 10 years old. My brother was 6 months old at the time. She died of leukemia. It was a very, very tragic affair. It left my dad and me and my brother alone. And I remember my dad literally took a priest, a head Monsignor in our parish, and it was, I won't even tell you where, St. John Brebeuf, right outside of Chicago. And this man came into our house, I'll never forget it, and said that he was going to put me and my little brother in an orphanage. And my dad literally picked him up and threw him out the door, literally. And from that point on, my dad never went back to church again. My brother never went to a Catholic school. I, of course, asked if I could finish only because I had friends there. But, you know, who knows what would have happened, looking back on what's the craziness that goes on in the church. But anyways, while you were talking about, you know, something, these people that do not want to get out because of the financial ties. But let's go back when you were in the Illuminati, and how did this happen? How did you finally leave? And tell us this whole story about you leaving the Illuminati. We haven't touched on that yet.
Sure. Well, I do want to say one thing that I agreed with Marilyn on. Without faith in God, I couldn't have done it, because I became a Christian, and that was for me revolutionary, because it made me question again more of what I was being taught or had believed all my life. I began to realize that what I was doing was wrong. I became increasingly cynical. And I also then started standing up to the head trainer in the county who despised me, because he would do things that were just blatantly cruel for no reason whatsoever. I'd say, you're wrong. Well, people don't like that. And he took it out on me in a lot of horrible ways. I finally made the decision to run. I ran to another state, because I knew that my chances of getting out while still staying in that area with people I knew, surrounded by people who were in the group, was not going to be very good. So I went to another state. I
Now, you had to leave your family and everything, right?
Everything. Well, my children were with their grandparents, and at that point I thought that was better than them being with my husband. And I was going to go get my kids. But my husband then called and he said, I want to reunite with you. And I said, okay, that's wonderful. And I said, but you have to get help. You have to get some treatment because we can't go on. You've got to get out of the group. And he said, okay. He said, I'll pick up the kids and meet you in a week. So, the day before he called, said, I'll be there tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. And so I was excited thinking, oh, he's getting out. That's wonderful. Instead, he had gotten the kids several days before. He was lying to me. I didn't know it. I had gone to a judge, and the day that he was supposed to arrive, there was a knock on my door. It was the policeman serving me divorce papers and also restraining orders saying that I could not come within 100 yards of my husband or my children. And at that point, I felt slightly punished for leaving the group. I fought that, and I fought for 4 years with a court system that said that things like this didn't occur because my husband would go into court and say, this woman's psychotic, she's making it all up. There's no way, ha, ha, ha. This stuff doesn't happen this day and age, and the judge would say, you're right, slam. Full custody to the father, and I had to have supervised visitation for 4 years with my own children because I was considered a kidnap risk. But through a lot of prayer, I had my whole church praying for me here in Texas, and through what I believe are a series of miracles, my children were finally allowed unsupervised visitation with me after 4 years. And during that time, I said to my daughter, who was 14, I said, I want so badly for you to get out. And she looks at me and she starts going, oh, you shouldn't have said that, Mom. You shouldn't have said that, Mom. She just freaked out. She just totally lost it. And I realized it was her programming cycling because she was just terrified. She was like, why'd you say that? And I said, it's okay, honey, calm down. And then finally, she was just shaking. And then finally she said, well, I don't want to go back and get hurt. And then I said, you don't have to. And at that point, I faced federal prison, but I called my ex and I said, I will not let those children go back and get hurt again. And he flew out to get them. And he could have put me in prison at the time because I was breaking the custody visitation. And you know how strong the courts are on that? Mm-hmm. And I said to him, please, because my daughter and son said, we don't want to go back, Dad. We don't want to get hurt. We don't want to do this anymore. And he looked at them and he said, I want to go think about it. And so he went home. And I was praying for him at the time. And then that night he called me and he says, oh my God. And I said, wait, he said, we've got to get out. And I'm like, yes, you do. And and then he said, and then he made the decision to get out. At that point, he went to a notary public. He gave me, and he did a legal document, gave me full custody of my children. And then he said he was so sorry for it. He put me through the HELL. He put me through for years.
Now, have you had any reprisals from anybody in the group since you leaving, or any warnings to be quiet or anything like that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, and there's one time when I did write one article that named some specific dates and times, and I got hurt afterwards, and it made me very cautious. And that's why I don't give a lot of radio interviews, and why I don't do a lot of this. That's one reason why. I
appreciate this because, the number of people you're going to help by maybe waking up the American people, what's really going on. Sometimes it's you can wake up many more people by a person like you than talking about 100 million different generalities. Let me take a call. Chris in Washington, you're on the Investigative Journal.
Hi. Smalley, I just want to say how much I appreciate your bravery in presenting this information in the way that you are. I've read your website recently. And my question is very simple. Based on the information that you're presenting, I'm wondering what timeline the organization of the larger family that you're describing has for implementing the New World Order.
Okay. I was told it would occur during my generation. I was told that by the year 2050 that they would be revealed. Now, again, their timelines changed, though. In fact, I think jokingly referred to them as being like the Soviet Union because, you know, how they had their 5- and 10-year plans and then things always got changed. In my own lifetime, I saw several different timelines for things that were supposed to occur change. But as Greg noted, I've also heard of from different people that actually there's a huge push in the last few years. It's like, it's close, let's make things happen more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't begin to guess whether that's an accurate timeline or not. I know what I was told.
I have a follow-up question, and that's it, and this will be it for me. I have recently, against my own resistance to doing so, started to investigate fringe matters, if you will. Among them, the upcoming date on the Mayan calendar of 2012. And as I've done this research, I've allowed myself just to be open to this information without believing anything I'm reading. And one of the ideas that's presenting itself is that around 2012, not just according to the Mayan calendar, but many other theories out there, that we will be undergoing, as a planet, a revolutionary shift, if you will, of some kind or another. And I'm wondering in the back of my mind if there might be any kind of race against the clock on that scale, if you will, especially if we're talking about a potential spiritual warfare, using your words in play here. Do you see a possible relation there?
Yes, I do. And 2012 is an important year, but again, I was not told that the final revealing would occur then. But I believe that what will happen is there will be events taking place that will help to set the stage. There's going to be, I was told, and again, I'm telling you what I was told while a member of the group, so please take it with a grain of salt, because as I know, these people aren't always honest or trustworthy. They are deceptive, but I was told that there would be an enormous economic collapse prior to the revealing, that basically the stock market would destabilize.
Well, that appears to be already happening.
Yeah, and well, and it's. I was told it would make the Great Depression look like Sunday school, and at that time, it's going to be. They're going to really be manipulating finances to bring about chaos, confusion, warfare, and then. I mean, but see, I don't like to be so negative. But I am telling you what I was taught when I was in the group. You know.
Well, I so appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we all do.
Yeah, and so...
You're a great voice.
Well, thank you. I mean, I appreciate that very much. But out of this chaos, they said, would come order. See, the group believes that out of chaos comes order.
Well,
as far as I'm concerned, I'd rather just, let things, Svali, these guys want to bring down this country financially, whatever way possible. And right now, your voice is important in that. And Chris, I really appreciate you saying that, because we want to stop these guys. I mean, come on. Let's get American people to get together and just put an end to this. We have a powerful group in numbers. We may not have the money, but we can take it back. And I don't want to be bullied by these kind of people. That's my feeling.
Yeah.
Let me take another call. Harper in Canada.
Can you hear me?
Harper?
Hi.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great.
Go ahead.
Great, thanks, Greg. And Svali, I read your expose when it came out on Sweet101.com a few years ago, and I always wondered what happened to you because you vanished from Sweet 101. So it's great to hear about you. A couple quick questions. I'll make them real fast. First is the term Moriah conquering wind. I'd never heard that before or since I read it in your expose. I wondered if you could elaborate on that term a little bit. I also wanted to ask you if this cult, as far as you know, claims to or believes to derive any of its heritage from Atlantis or any other lost civilization. Okay.
I'm not sure about the reference to Moriah you're describing, because Moriah is I mean, but I can certainly address the second question. The Illuminati completely believe that Atlantis is real. They teach it to their children as part of the oral history. They believe it was one of the greatest civilizations that ever existed and one of the most advanced. And what they teach their take on it is that Atlantis was a great race of highly intelligent people who had a highly advanced state, and who were highly enlightened. And what they teach the Illuminati children is that then this prophet of the enemy, who is the prophet of God, came and foretold their destruction if they didn't change their ways. Because they were definitely occultists. They were Luciferian on Atlantis. I mean, that was the religion. And in fact, a lot of the advances that Atlantis enjoyed was passed down to them through supernatural means, is what I'll say. And so they laughed the prophet, and they killed him. And I guess sometime afterwards, we were taught that a few inhabitants escaped, but tragically the great city was lost. And the Illuminati to this day mourn the loss of Atlantis, because they feel that the few survivors that left were among the great people who helped found what you call the precursors of Illuminism.
One more quick question, if I may, and I wanted to ask you if you have any reason to believe that the people, men and or women at the top of the pyramid, so to speak, practice a kind of magic where they are kind of skipping through time, in other words.
Oh yes. Oh,
leaving one body, leaving a solar spirit, leaving one body and coming and being born into another one, and therefore, living through time.
All the time. In fact, see, now I didn't go there in this interview because you start sounding wacko if you start discussing things like that. But in the spiritual side, they very much teach things like time travel, traveling out of body, psychic battling, things like that, things that cannot be explained by logic. And I saw things that I cannot explain through human intellect or reasoning that were highly supernatural and involve all of that and more.
Okay, great. It's a pleasure to speak with you, man. God bless you.
Thanks, Harper. Hey, I think we have Dave Wilcox called in. I think you know Dave through emails.
Yes.
Zvali. Dave, you want to say hello, and you have a question for Zvali?
Sure. Zvali, it's great to have you on the air. I'm really glad you decided to do it, so thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Dave. It's good to talk with you.
Yeah, I feel like you're an old friend. I've been reading your stuff for so long, and you share so willingly and openly about yourself. It's a real honor to be able to speak with you in person like this.
Well,
go ahead. Well, Dave, you may have something you want to say to Zvali. Go ahead.
Sure. I think one of the things I'd really like to have covered here is you shared with me in an email recently about the stages of enlightenment that they try to guide people through.
Yes.
And I would like you to try to sketch out for people how the behavioral conditioning that's coming through the media and the movies and so forth might have affected them. In other words, what personality characteristics would you see in a person when they have been influenced by these teachings? How would the average person who's not really a bad person start to be leaning if the Illuminati teachings were actually having an effect on them? What would they be like? What would start happening?
Well, again, as I said, the average person is not going to be a member of the group, so the influence would be much less. But the media, I believe that, well, in fact, I know that some of the media that we're seeing nowadays is specifically targeted towards teaching people their philosophy goals. All you have to do is watch a children's cartoons on Saturday morning, and almost across the board you'll see morphing, power battles, occult, and that's intentional. Movies coming out. But basically, if a person's being influenced by their teachings, that person will learn to not trust their own instincts, their own feelings, their own body, their own perceptions. They'll be looking outside for guidance. Second of all, they will be leaning towards a heavily occultic worldview. That leaning upon the occult is very heavily encouraged. All you have to do is watch Harry Potter.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of the...
I mean, not to slam one of the most popular movies, but yes, I mean, or The Matrix. If you want to know pure Illuminist philosophy, The Matrix shows it.
Oh, yeah.
The entire...
Right down with Morpheus being broken down with the injections, and they said that it's like hacking a computer.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll come back with our final segment, Big Finish on the Investigative Journal with Zvali on the Public Broadcasting Network. Okay, we're back with our final segment with Svali, and she's telling us about her experiences, 30 years with this insidious group, the Illuminati, and how deeply penetrated and infiltrated they are in our culture and in our country. Svali, we talked about the higher levels, the mid-levels you were involved in as a head trainer. How low do they go? I mean, I've said all along they're involved in gang stalking, the MK Ultra program, infiltrating truth organizations, infiltrating groups that are trying to do good. How far down do they go?
Well, they go down to the sister group level that I mentioned, and most sister groups have anywhere from usually roughly around 30 members. And those are what a lot of people would consider what you think of as satanic cults with the high priest and priestess. That would be the the local level, the lower level. But those people are also very active in their community. And so they will be involved in infiltrating activities when possible. Because to them, it's not infiltrating, it's helping. They think they're helping the group or helping people by becoming a member and spreading the influence.
Holly, tell us in your own words, you got about a minute or two left here. You went forward, you came forward, you're now living a life completely away from them. What's your hopes of the future in our country right now?
My hope is that people realize that this is happening and that they will start doing something about it, that they will start looking at. Now, again, we're talking about people who are mentally wealthy, so it won't be easy, but if people could rise up in prayer and just say, this isn't okay, if people will become informed enough to want to learn more about it, be aware they exist, and then possibly pray that people will take action against the things that are happening. Because
okay, Svali, we're all out of time. We're going to end on that prayer. I really thank you for coming forward. You're very courageous. We'll talk again, and I'll be back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal. Same time, same place.